Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the City Council meeting of October 13th. We're going to go ahead and start with an invocation, which we'll see by a moment of silence, and then the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up, we have the roll call. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Bajent.
Here.
Clegg.
Here.
Halliburton.
Here.
Sanchez.
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
Woodings.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. And next up, request for approval of the minutes from October 6th of both the work session and the evening meeting.
Madam Mayor, I request approval of the minutes from the City Council work session and regular evening meeting of October 6th, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Bajent.
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. First up on special business, we have Resolution 49620. This is a continuation of the previous public health order, but because it expires after 30 days, we had to sign a new one.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of RES 496-20.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Bajent.
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Next up, we have revised findings, CR 19-25.
Madam Mayor, members of council, as you'll recall, on September 29th, you denied the applicant Collegiate Development a rezone request of just over 3 acres along Boise Avenue from C1D or general commercial or neighborhood commercial with design review and R2 or medium density residential to the residential office zone. You did direct staff to return with findings at that time. And so those findings have been included in your packet for adoption this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Council President, you're muted.
Sorry about that, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you. I looked at the revised findings and suggest that we make 2 small changes to them to better reflect the discussion on the night of the hearing. And they all center around the last paragraph in the findings, which starts with lastly, the proposed zoning district. And the current findings talk about not maintaining or preserving the compatibility because of the high density of the proposal. And my notes and my memory of the discussion that night tell me that, in fact, it wasn't the density or even the massing of the proposal that was the problem. It was that it was a mono use and did not include mixed use. And then secondly, there is a sentence in this paragraph that talks about the existing commercial zoning signifying a mix of uses should exist and be maintained and revitalized in this location. I suggest that we move that sentence up into the second paragraph before goal, the sentence starting with goal NAC 7. If we do this, I'll read through this for everyone. And that we replace the discussion about high density with a phrase that says that the zoning district may be an appropriate transition to achieve the scale that is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood at the height and the unit count of the modified proposal presented if it is used to achieve a building or buildings comprised of a mix of uses and a range of housing types. And with those changes, I believe it more accurately reflects the discussion that night, and I would propose that we adopt it. And I did get this in writing to P&Z or to planning staff, PDS staff. I'm sorry I didn't get it to all of the council. I thought I had done that earlier today and just realized that it only went to the mayor and council leadership.
Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
I seconded Council President Clegg's motion last week, and I'll second this motion again.
Great, thank you. Do you have a motion and a second?
Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
while I did not vote on the prevailing side of this decision, I'll be voting yes tonight because I believe that the findings reflect what our conversation was and reflect what the decision was ultimately of the council. So I'll be supporting it.
Thanks. Clerk, will you please call a roll?
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Point of clarification, is it appropriate for folks who didn't vote on the original one to vote on this? I just want to double check. Madam Mayor?
It's appropriate, but it's also entirely appropriate if you didn't read the testimony to know if this is reflective of the testimony and decision, just to abstain.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure. I will vote yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. So next up, we have the Water Renewal Utility Plan. This is, a couple weeks ago, we had a public hearing on the Water Renewal Utility Plan. And so Steve is back with a short presentation and then a request for approval of the plan.
Madam Mayor, council members, thank you very much for having me back. My name is Steve Burgos. I'm the Public Works Director. And yes, we're looking for a decision tonight to greenlight the Water Renewal Utility Plan. And just a reminder, the work that started almost 5 years ago is related to some of the challenges and drivers that we're facing as a community, whether that's climate change, whether it's growth, whether it's meeting regulatory requirements. This plan was developed to try to address all of those issues. And so let's jump in. I have a couple of slides to review some of the comments we received over the last month. But before we do that, I just want to mention, or remind you rather, what is the utility plan recommended approach? So the plan prioritizes reinvestment in aging infrastructure. We're adding system capacity. We are a growing city. We're going to meet regulatory requirements moving forward. There'll be additional regulatory requirements. And then we are going to pursue recycled water that's proposed in the utility plan. And so just a quick look at what's going to be coming. This is the existing system, the West Boise facility, the Lander Street facility, and a 20-mile south farm. And on this graphic, what you don't see are the almost 1,000 miles of pipeline throughout the system. And so the existing infrastructure is aging. So that first bullet, we're going to reinvest in a lot of our aging infrastructure. We've started that with the Lander Street project. There's a lot more investment coming. We're going to look at regulatory requirements. We've looked at an option called Enhancing the River, where we're going to look at some natural solutions to address temperature issues in the river. We're also going to look at adding capacity. So about the 2028, 2029 timeframe, we need to add about 5 million gallons per day of additional capacity. We're proposing at this point to do that through an industrial recycled water program. So to be a third facility located likely in the southeast, but we'll be coming back to you with all of these project proposals as the concepts develop. And then sometime in the mid-2030s, we'll need a fourth facility as well. So this is meeting the goal also of decentralized management of the resources and making those resources available to be used, recycled water to be used in the community. So that's just a brief overview of the recommended approach. Over the last month or so, we've received comments from the public. I just want to quickly go over those. You've seen them. They were in the council packet. For the utility plan itself, about 20 comments. There were multiple comments in support of the plan, specifically that it was a proactive plan, that we were pursuing things like industrial reuse. There is interest in figuring out who pays for the plan. Certainly that's a big priority as we move forward in the next 6 to 9 months. There was concerns over the review time. Folks wanted more review time, and then concerns over emerging constituents and farmers union, which I'll talk here in a second. But specific to the plan, we didn't see any or hear any major process issues that were identified. Certainly there were concerns over the emerging constituents and farmers union, which I'll cover. So on the emerging constituent side, we agree. There were approximately 36 comments. Most of those comments started off with an acknowledgement that reuse is likely something we need in the future, and that there's support for further exploration of reuse and investigation of emerging constituents. Certainly there were concerns about the science of emerging constituents. Again, we agree. We're engaged in that process of being up to date on the latest science. PFAS in particular was an issue. And most of the emerging constituent comments were related to the Farmers Union Canal option that we've talked about. Approximately 55 comments were related to Farmers Union. There was a concern over perceived lack of transparency and a perceived potential for canal contamination. And there were requests for more discussion prior to moving forward. Again, we agree. We'll have those discussions as we propose projects. Any concepts that would move forward will come back to Mayor and Council for discussion, whether that be a concept or a project, whatever. So the themes were fairly consistent. And as a result, in the plan itself, we did add comments trying to address some of the emerging constituent concerns and affirm that there will be ongoing work related to emerging constituents, whether it's studies, specific research that we sponsor. I think one thing we learned as a result of the Farmers Union Canal project is that communication, education, outreach, those are going to be big priorities for us moving forward. I think if we had it to do over again, we'd probably do it differently. And so moving forward, we will. And we're going to try to be more open and transparent about things like contracts, things like options on recycled water. But again, I would remind Council, all of these concepts that are in the Water Renewal Utility Plan will be brought back to you all as we move forward with studies, projects. None of that will happen without further discussion on a project-by-project basis with Council. So just very quickly, when we think of a project, it typically moves from a concept all the way over to construction and operation. So there's a life cycle of any project. And in any one phase in that particular budget for that fiscal year, we'll have projects in the various stages. And we'll be very clear with Council on where those projects are. So this is just an example. Maybe at the concept phase, we'll have idea A or idea B that we want to move forward with for that fiscal year. You'll see that as part of the budget request. Similarly, on the definition phase, you'll see where we have studies or permits that we're pursuing. That'll be transparent on the budget request, and you can see how we're going to do that moving forward. So where we have studies on, say, emerging constituents, that will be clearly identified in our annual budget request, again, being transparent and making sure that everybody's aware of the work that's going on. So in conclusion, a reminder, we had 3 key policy questions. I won't read those to you. But our question for you tonight is to confirm that the utility plan effectively addresses or frames the policy questions. That's our question to you. And so what we are asking is formal approval of the Water Renewal Utility Plan via motion. We are not asking for any specific projects to be approved, nor are we asking for any specific funding strategies. That's coming in the next 6 to 9 months. And then just next steps with Council before we move on to the motion. We're at the decision point on the 13th, and then we're going to initiate the financial policy and discussions in November, December timeframe with Council. So with that, I will stand for any questions, and then we are requesting a motion for approval of the utility plan. Thank you.
Before there's a motion on the table, I just want to thank Steve and team for putting together the presentations we saw last week and acknowledge all the members of the community that came to us with their concerns, specifically related to water quality, but also interest and concerns related to this long-term capital investment that we'll be making to ensure that our city, our kids and our grandkids actually have access to clean water that in much the same way that we have historically. And so I want to reemphasize that. And actually, before I reemphasize something, I want to point out too that it was last week, I think, that you came before us. 2 weeks ago
on the data.
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago, Public Works came to us, and because we have now conducted water quality tests throughout the city, including in a canal of concern. And so we have baseline data when it comes to these emerging constituents of concern, as well as other contaminants in water. And I encourage anyone that is curious and interested to see where we're at today to take a look, because our goal is in the long run, if we do move forward with some of these projects after specific project approval and testimony from the public would be that we'd be able to address some of the concerns around water quality that currently exist. And so really appreciate now that we have that data from which we can measure improvement and then think about how we make investments and ensure that we have water for generations to come in this valley. And so thanks for all of that, and do want to just repeat what Steve has said, is that this is for this decision tonight, if approved, allows us to start looking at financial models and really get a sense of what needs to happen next to make a long-term plan a reality, not only to make investments to bring up to date the investments we've made years ago, but also plan for growth. But then project by project, whether it be renewal and reuse, options on reused water, will come to council again. And many of these things will come to council as well past our time here, because this is a far-reaching, long-term planning exercise. So thanks, Steve.
Madam Mayor, if I may just say thank you to you and the council. It's a lot of information, the memos. We asked a lot of you. There's a lot of homework involved. You all asked really good questions, and I just want to say thank you for your patience. It was a lot of information that we sent your way, so thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity this past week to virtually join a high school class, and one of their really excellent questions was, what is the most important thing that the city council will do this year? And I was like, this is not going to sound glamorous at all. It's not going to sound sexy, but I'm telling you, it is the water renewal utility plan. Like, this plan is going to make sure that we can flush our toilets for the next 50 years. And nobody really reaches out to city council members about flushing their toilets until their toilet doesn't flush. So what we're doing here is really important. And I appreciate all of the citizen input we've received in the past years. You know, this has been going on a long time. And I remember when I very first came to council, I think it was the first time I sat down with Steve, he introduced me to the concept really of, you know, drinking reused water. He was like, how do you feel about this? And I was like, well, I've never really thought about it before. You know, I just always figured our water comes from the ground or it comes from the river. And it had never really occurred to me that that was a possibility. And he talked about the outreach that they had done at that point, which included some outreach to some high school students who were like, why wouldn't we reuse water? Why wouldn't we drink recycled water? And so that gives me a lot of hope for the future that we're going to be able to responsibly manage the resources that we have. I think often we forget that we live in a desert. You know, water is a scarce resource. And I think that in coming years, because of climate change and other factors, it's going to become less dependable. And we're going to have to be really smart with the way that we treat it. So I appreciate all of the public works staff in bringing us this very high level overarching plan that just says, here's what we think needs to happen going into the future. It gives them some direction without being too prescriptive. We're not saying we want reused water to go into this system right now. We're saying water renewal is important. Using recycled water is what our citizens have told us is important to them. Using our water differently is important. We need to explore options that do that in our city in a very safe and responsible and sustainable way. So I want to thank everyone for their incredible amount of work. I know it's been a very long time coming. I come from a private business background, and I'm always so pleased with the way that our public works department is operated as a utility. And really, there's so much overlap with the way that they manage all of our money, the way that they spend money and invest in our future. So I really commend them on that point as well. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I'm
Thank you.
actually going to ask that we have, I figured I wouldn't be in play vote-wise, so I wanted to make a comment before a motion was made, but I'm going to ask to have a motion on the floor,
Madam Mayor,
and then we'll have more conversation. And then Lisa, it'll be on you after that. Yeah, go ahead.
I move that we approve the water renewal utility plan.
Second.
Second.
Clerk, will you please call the roll? Thank you.
Oh, Can we have the rest of the
Yeah,
discussion
sorry,
before we
yep.
vote?
Yep, we don't have to have a vote before we have conversation. Yes, go ahead. Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Steve, staff, thank you.
Excuse
For
me,
all-
just a second, council member. Sorry, I'm sorry to cut you off again, council member. No, the public comment period ended and there was a public hearing in September with availability for email comments up until today. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Steve, staff, thank you so much for all your hard work on this. Just like Council Pro Tem Woodings, I remember very clearly what it was like being introduced to this concept of caring about where our water comes from. I imagine, like a lot of folks who live in our city, we don't give it a lot of thought because it's always there. And I think this year, like no other, the value of having clean water has been made very, very clear to us because we've been told for the past year how important it is for us to clean our hands, to be careful of cleanliness and of hygiene to ward off the possibility of contracting COVID-19. And then to really discover how important and vital and essential the workers who comprise our public work staff are to our health. You know, to know that we had staff sacrificing so much just to make sure that we had what we needed during this difficult time. And on top of that, to fully actually realize that folks are putting themselves in danger to make sure that the rest of our city is safe. All of that became more clear, I think, this year, even to the fact that it's through monitoring the levels of COVID in the water to determine, you know, what our rates were. All of that has just become something that has helped me to greater appreciate the work that this particular department does for our city. And so to know that the work that it's not just happening now, but that there's planning for the future of future Boiseans who are going to be joining us in the city, and the things that we need to have in place to make sure that they too get to enjoy the services that we enjoy at this time. So I just wanted to make that clear that if folks have been able to think about other things at this time and not worry about where the water comes from, it's all thanks to the staff and the leadership at Public Works. So thank you for that.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Also, thanks, staff. These kinds of planning efforts are intense. They're complex, and I think our staff handled that very well. I'm a planner by trade, or at least by avocation. My training's actually in something else, but I've been working in planning for almost 25 years. And planning is the first step. I know that a lot of the comments that we got on this plan have concerns about how we'll carry out the plan. And I certainly honor those concerns. I, in fact, think that those concerns have highlighted some things that we've not faced before as a community because we haven't had to think about it. Doing this plan has caused us to think about it. It's caused us to face it. And I think in the end, we'll be better off for it. But most importantly, I think what we have before us is the framework for how we can go from where we are today to where we need to be 50 years from today in terms of water use, water renewal, and how we think about water. Until this plan was contemplated, I think most Boiseans were content that our water ran through our household, ran to our wastewater treatment plant, and then got flushed into the Boise River and was somebody else's problem downstream if there was anything else left in it that was a problem. And over the years, we've had to continually clean up and clean up and clean up, rightfully so, the various constituents that find their way into our water, to the point where we're now at a stage where we can begin to think about water renewal. But this next stage has forced us to think even more deeply about the things that are going into our water. I think for many years, this entire country, perhaps the entire world, has been sort of cavalier about what happens to the chemicals that we use every day that then end up in our environment somewhere. Certainly, we've faced it in air quality in this region. We're facing it as an entire planet as you look at the warming and the other effects of climate change. And I think this plan is causing us to face it in terms of what it does to our water. And we may find 50 years from now that our children will look back and say, what in the world were they thinking to use these kinds of chemicals and then put them in our water? Who knows for sure, but I'm kind of hopeful that that's the case and we'll no longer be doing that. But if we didn't face up to it, we'd never begin asking those questions. We'd never begin facing what it takes to actually make that water usable again. Every drop of water on Earth has been reused hundreds and thousands of times. Who knows where the water we are using today originally came from, but I suspect it had something to do with dinosaurs at one point. And so this plan, I am so excited about this plan because it now causes us to face that reality. I'm also excited because I know how well the city faces those realities. Having watched what happened with the phosphorus removal facility at Dixie Drain, I realize how carefully this staff and this city treats the prospect of trying something new and trying it to see if we can better the environment. I think the water reuse and recycled water ideas in this plan are those kinds of ideas. And I know that this city and this staff will carry out the same careful analysis to ensure that the implementation of those ideas in fact do help the environment, because I've seen that in action. And finally, it's heartening to see so many comments about how we're thinking about the financing on this, and that people realize that there are both pros and cons to paying upfront with cash versus paying over time with debt. That people recognize that there are folks in our community who should not be asked to step up and pay more, but should be helped so that they can have the same opportunities some of us needed when we were younger. And so I thank all of you who commented on that section. I was very heartened to read those comments and the thoughtfulness that most people put into how they reacted to those various financing scenarios. So with those comments, I heartily support this plan. That's just exactly what it is, a plan, and look forward to the really hard work at every implementation stage, knowing that in the end, our environment, our city is going to be better for it. So thank you, staff. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, fellow council members, for being the leaders that it takes to bring this kind of forward thinking forward.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
I'll try to be pretty quick. I think if somebody asked me, one of the things that would surprise me about my first year on city council would be how much I became interested in the public works department and everything that they do. And like council member Pro Tem Woodings, earlier today, I was with an eco reps class from Boise State University, and they were asking some questions about, what are you all doing in regards to climate change? And we got to talk a little bit about water renewal, and quickly that dominated the conversation. I kept trying to get them back to bicycles and transportation. And I'm continually surprised how much people like talking about water renewal and public works. And so I'm really appreciative of all of the work that went into this. The staff, of course, you, Steve, and Councilmember Bajan. I know that you've been working hard and you've been a great advocate for this as well. I wish the folks who took off from the room would have stuck around for a little bit longer, because I also want to thank them and everybody else who submitted comments. I think that advocating for clean water is like one of the most important things that we can do. And so I appreciate their comments and pushing us in that direction. I would encourage them to continue to do that, because the only thing that's going to do is challenge us to do better. And if I know anything about the Public Works Department, is they're always accepting that challenge. So thank you, Steve.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll also be brief. I agree with all the comments that have been made, and also what Councilmember Halliburton just said in terms of the Public Works Department. Having, when I first got on council, the opportunity to serve on the commission, and it's amazing the types of projects you take on. It's really quite possibly the most exciting department, and you wouldn't guess that. There's nothing more important than the water we drink and the air that we breathe. And this is probably something, I know you've been on the job for some time now, but is probably not something I knew that you were going to have to tackle. It's a big job that you've taken on in your department, and quite possibly one of the most significant investments that we'll have to make in the city over the next 20 years. And it's very real and deadly important to get it right. And I think you've done a fabulous job in drafting this plan for the future that we can now delve into and get to the nitty gritty. And I also wanted to compliment the Public Works Department on the response to comments. There was quite a few, and they varied, and there was topics are all of which extremely important, and some aren't specifically part of this plan today, but you tackled them head on, and I read all those comments, and I think that the summation and the responses were quite fitting, and you did a great job. I will be supporting the plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Steve, Haley, Colin, thank you so much. Fantastic work. Thanks to everybody else on your team. I'm so excited to vote yes. You've worked incredibly hard, and everyone said it because it's so true. So thank you. And I look forward to voting yes.
Madam Mayor, I have one more quick thing for Steve. Steve, if it's ever more financially feasible, can we have pure water brew again? Because that was so much fun.
Well, Madam Mayor, Council Pro Tem, we'll look into it. We actually have been thinking about that we want to have a part two. So stay tuned.
Excellent. Count me in.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. With that, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Sorry, yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Abby. All right. Next up, we have the consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence.
Madam Mayor,
Mhm.
having heard no such requests, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great, thanks all. Next up, we have first reading of ordinances 3220.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on the first reading be read by number and title only and filed for the second reading calendar.
Without objection.
ORD-32-20 and ordinance CAR 19-00028 for property located at 9,000 West State Street, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance from single-family residential R-1A to high-density residential with design review R-3D, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and provide an effective date.
And none on second, but we do have one on third, 3120.
Madam Mayor, I move that further reading of ORD 31-20 be dispensed with and the record reflect that it's been read a third time in full.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
ORD 31-20, an ordinance amending Title 11, Chapter 7, Section 3, Subsection 5, Boise City Code, and providing an effective date.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of ORD 31-20.
Second.
Motion and second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
And now we have one ordinance on the first, second, and third reading calendar.
Madam Mayor, I move that all rules of the council interfering with the immediate consideration of ORD 33-20 be suspended, that the portions of Idaho Code 50-902 requiring an ordinance be read on 3 different days, twice by title and once in full, be dispensed with, and that the records show it has been read the 3rd time in full.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
ORD 33-20. An ordinance amending the emergency temporary suspension and amendment of provisions of Boise City Code Title 3, Chapter 3, Alcoholic Beverages, Title 3, Chapter 4, Sidewalk Cafes, and Title 5, Chapter 2, Section 10, Alcohol Open Container, Boise City Code Title 1, Chapter 16, Section 5, to allow for water-filled patio barriers less than 3 feet in height, amending Section 9 to extend the automatic sunset provision to December 31st, 2021, providing for a waiver of the reading rules and providing an effective date.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that ORD 33-20 be approved.
Second.
We have a
Madam
motion.
Mayor.
Motion and second. I'm just going to jump in here and say with all of that wonky language in the title, this ordinance provides restaurants and other businesses to expand into patio spaces, parklets, and 8th Street through the end of 2021. So for another, 14 months. So thanks to our team in the Economic Development Office, the DBA, the Alcohol Beverage, and whatever the C stands for at the state, and the Highway District for working on this with us.
Madam Mayor, I want to echo your sentiments. I was approached several weeks ago by one of our downtown restaurateurs who said, we need this to be extended. And the answer at the time was it didn't have a sunset. But what a lot of business folks know is that not having a sunset is basically the same as saying we can take this away at any time. So I commend the mayor and her staff in creating this actual sunset so that we can give our businesses some certainty leading into the coming year. They can make some wanted and needed investments in their patio, in their expanded patio spaces, and really beautify our downtown. So I look forward to everyone who takes the opportunity to do that and appreciate everyone who's expanded their patios so far.
Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. So next up, we have the one public hearing. So anybody that's still here should be here for, I just want to make sure there's one public hearing, the CUP 20-10 issue. It's an appeal of the Planning and Zoning Commission's approval of a CUP. Just a couple of housekeeping things before Cody gets started. So I've got a lot of people online Zooming in with testimony. Last night at the Planning and Zoning hearing, there was, I think, 90 people testifying and only one person came into the chambers and everybody else was on Zoom. I felt badly for that commission not having any faces in the room. So it's nice to see those of you that came tonight. So we will, I think that today, it looks like the applicant and the applicant's architect are here. Is the appellant? Yeah, you guys are the appellant's here in the room as well. So it looks like we have Cody. Oh, and then 2 appellants, 2 different parties, actually, not just 2 appellants. And then the applicant and Nina. Is Nina in the room or is Nina Zooming? Okay, I imagine Autumn must be online. It says Autumn here. So we'll start with all of those and then we'll move into parties of record, though, and I'll start with, it looks like I might go with these three folks in the room just in case you want to head out of here, and then we'll go online, and then we'll see if, and I'm going to go first with people that signed up online, and then we'll see if anybody else is there. And so for those of you that are coming up, this is where I get to do like the mom thing. There's wipes there and hand cleaner. So if you're going to take off your mask, just afterwards, please wipe down the mic for the next person. Is there a garbage can there? Can we, here, you, this happened last week as well. I've got a, great, I'll bring one in here for next week. So then people can come up and we'll go from there. We'll probably take a break every hour and a half or so. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started.
That permit allowed a private commercial school and a church to occupy 2 existing buildings located at the northwest corner of Eastman and 14th Street in the north end. For a little background, the applicant actually received a very similar approval back in 2009 that allowed the 10,000 square foot historic church to be used as a school, and it also allowed the adjacent roughly 2,000 square foot home to be converted to additional classroom or office space. Neither the previous approval or the current allowed for the construction of any new buildings. Both simply allowed for the adaptive reuse of the existing structures with very minimal site improvements. Based on the original approval, extensive work actually has been completed on the church and some to the site. That original approval did expire, and work remains to be completed on the conversion. The current application includes that same private school that was approved in 2009. It also proposes to reintroduce a church into the historic church building. Like that original application, the commission's approval did include a series or an extensive series of conditions to mitigate impacts. That includes limits on the number of events, hours of operation, and required off-site parking for larger functions. Most notably, it also required a detailed review 1 year after operation begins. As you can see in the record, the commission did hear testimony both in favor and opposition to the application. Concerns focused on traffic, parking associated with those larger events. As a reminder, the application does not involve any new construction. Rather, it is the adaptive reuse of that historic church and adjacent residents. We'll acknowledge right up front that this will have impacts on the neighborhood. These properties are currently vacant. Any reuse will result in increased traffic and some demand for parking. That wasn't lost on us in making our recommendation. And I think if you saw in the record, it also was carefully considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission. They found, however, that the benefits of reintroducing a church and a school outweighed the potential issues. They also felt that conditions of approval would mitigate impacts on the neighborhood. It was only after an extensive hearing that they unanimously approved the conditional use permit. Obviously, that commission's decision has been appealed, again, by 2 different groups. There were a host of items included in the appeals, and I'd like to summarize the key areas and briefly respond. The first ground relates to traffic and parking. The appellant's contention that the project will rely almost exclusively on parking in the right-of-way is certainly accurate. The applicant is proposing only 8 parking spaces, but that is more than historically ever existed on the site. Absent demolition of this historic church or the single-family home, it's essentially the most that physically can be provided. The commission's approval did include conditions requiring agreements for larger events. Other mitigating factors include a provision for about 100 bicycle parking spaces and just the general walkability of the area. The appellant's assertion that traffic will increase is also correct to an extent. The reuse of this abandoned church and vacant home will result in increased activity. However, in our mind and the commission's, the absence of significant parking on site will require the use of alternate modes of transportation. Impacts would obviously be far greater if all parking were accommodated on this site or an adjacent property. The commission recognized this and carefully evaluated the unique nature of this proposal. Again, absent new construction, this really isn't a departure from what this building was historically built to support. The appellants also believe that the combination of traffic and parking creates safety concerns. Like the site, there are no alteration proposed to the public right-of-way as it abuts the site. The street conditions here are not unlike much of the north end, and neither ACHD, who I believe are available on Zoom tonight, or the fire department objected to this request. The record does confirm that the commission's decision was based on substantial evidence as it relates to safety. And from our perspective, we don't believe there's been an error in this regard. The appellants also suggested that a notice of the commission's hearing was deficient. Noticing met our standards, which, as you know, were recently increased, specifically that radius distance from 300 to 500 feet. And that requirement does exceed that's required by state code. There was also a question on how the combination of uses was presented to the Planning Commission. It was presented as a proposal to operate a private commercial school and church. The commission did have more than 200 pages of written evidence and nearly 3 hours of public testimony. I think the record shows that the commission and public were well informed of the nature of the proposed use. To be fair, the proposal is not unique. It's consistent with other churches and schools throughout the city. It's common for both to support an almost unlimited list of various functions at different times. That would include things like sporting events, performances, weddings, funerals, other gatherings. While the appellants do disagree with the decision, I think the record indicates that it was based on substantial evidence and testimony. Finally, it's been suggested that the project fails to comply with the special events ordinance. That chapter of code, as you can see here, actually doesn't apply to this application, and it's actually specifically exempted. So in our mind, it would be difficult to find an error in this regard. In conclusion, the appellants have raised a number of valid points in their appeal. Again, the adaptive reuse of currently vacant buildings is going to result in an increase in activity. Reusing buildings like this, though, from our perspective, are in the best interest of the community. It's not only from a sustainability perspective, but also preserving a key piece of this neighborhood's history and character. Again, the unanimous decision was based on significant evidence and testimony. And because of that, we are recommending denial of the appeal this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's do 12. Yeah. So first up, we have appellant number 1, the 14th Street neighbors. That's Brent and Corinna.
Yeah, so we were going to split 5 minutes for Brent and 10 minutes for me. Is Brent there tonight or is he online as well?
He is. So I was planning on 12 minutes since we have 2 different appellants, but this means everybody gets 15. So it adds quite a bit of time to the evening. That's fine. We've got Brent and Corinna, and then we have another appellant.
Yes, we were told we had 15 minutes, so I'd like Brent to have 5 and me to have 10. Who would you prefer goes first?
However you 2 planned it. You're the same party. Kelly Olson is the second appellant.
Madam Mayor, Kelly Olson and I are here for one appeal. Ms. Yautz is on the line. Hers is a separate appeal for the 14th Street Neighbors Group, but she's asked me to present part of her appeal. Sorry.
So you're presenting twice tonight?
With permission of the council. Both appellants have asked me to present.
On different things?
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna go with. No.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
just to, I know there's a Gordian knot here to untie, but just to clarify that the people testifying in each of these separate appeals also testified on those issues in the Planning and Zoning Commission. We don't want to receive appellant testimony on a different appeal. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. This is something, but we have 2 appellants, so it sounds like the one appellant, Corinna and Brent, we call you appellant number 1 on the piece of paper tonight. And then, So Brent, you and Corinna did not submit an appellant and an appeal together?
14th Street Neighbors is kind of a large group. We
Okay,
live on 14th Street.
so then Kelly, you were a separate appeal, but you've also asked Brent to speak for you? All right, we're going to go with 12 minutes for both, for each. So first, I'm going to have Corinna kick us off just for clarity,
Thank you.
because right. So Corinna, you'll kick off, and then Brent, I guess, will finish your testimony, and then Kelly will do the other appeals testimony.
For the record, we were promised 15 minutes, so thank you, council members, for hearing 14th Street Neighbors Appeal. My name is Karen Ayutz, and I have lived on 14th Street for 25 years. My goal here in this brief time is to prevent large events of hundreds of people in an old building across the street from my home. When I bought my house, the old church was zoned residential. All surrounding properties are zoned residential. The North End Neighborhood Association withdrew support of this CUP once they learned of this appeal, the lack of notification to neighbors of the events used, and the applicant's adverse impacts on neighbors. Please follow their lead. The city planners have designated these large events as special events, but they have also stated that these are not special events because they take place entirely on private property. This is simply not the case. Special events require parking, which cannot possibly take place on this property. But let's leave that argument for teams of lawyers from insurance companies if the building catches on fire and your liability insurance is implicated. A related scrap of rhetoric is that churches and schools sometimes hold large events. Agreed. But these large events do not fundamentally alter the nature of a church or a school, and they do not dramatically increase adverse impacts to those of a concert hall, dance hall, or for-profit event center. Many years ago, the applicant bought the building privately, then sold it to his nonprofit. For the record, I have never opposed the nonprofit mission. I am 100% against the use of the building as an event center. On the pre-application form, which is in your packet, the city planner and the applicant used the event center designation, but this changed on the application itself. Even though they designated this use together, the applicant and the city never notified neighbors of the intended use as an event center. Yes, there are more than 200 pages of evidence, and the applicant and the city planner cannot quote one sentence of evidence in support of the large events use as accessory because no such substantiated evidence exists. The city defines an accessory use as one that is subordinate and incidental to the main use. There could be 2,000 pages of evidence, and the application's business plan is not included, nor are his financial statements. The substantiation does not exist. He plans to rent out the space to third parties for large events. He repeatedly states it is primary to their business plan. The building being far above occupancy capacity for these events and the increased adverse impact of these events also disqualifies it as accessory. He has planned to rent out the business to third-party promoters and for large events from the very beginning and has stated this repeatedly, but he has never one time notified neighbors of it in mailings or on a sign. And this is the notification that's lacking. Most of the neighbors don't even know about this. The applicant stated at both the North End Neighborhood Association meeting and at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting that he will need a much higher occupancy with many more events in order for his business to be solvent. We're not talking about dance recitals and church dinners. We're talking about any event that might make the applicant money. And this income will not be considered part of the nonprofit by the IRS. It is not generated by the nonprofit's main mission. In public meetings, the applicant repeatedly states that his business's requirement of renting out the building for large events. However, neighbors have never been notified of this use, even though they talked about it at the pre-application meeting. The applicant wants 174 large events each year. Who is counting? Who will stop these events when they go over the limit? Planning and zoning basically gave the applicant a special privilege of large events far beyond the capacity of the building. And they also created a unique service of overseeing the off-site parking that they require for these events. This new service is to be provided by some undesignated city employee who will perform it in an unknown manner. In granting this special privilege of special events that goes so far above the capacity of the building, they did not create any mechanism of proposed oversight of special events, any review of offsite parking agreements, or any mechanism for documentation or enforcement of the offsite parking requirements and occupancy limit of 300. They don't have, currently, there is no substantiated evidence of an off-site parking agreement, not with Albertsons or any other parking lot owner. Not only should every off-site parking agreement be documented, there should be a way for neighbors to view all related documentation, along with the city's oversight efforts as it undertakes this novel service of overseeing the parking requirements on the applicant's behalf. The applicant plans to make money by renting out the building for large events. The city is helping him by creating a special privilege of events far past the building's capacity and a custom service for him to do so. Why should neighbors who were never notified through mail or by sign of these large events with no say at all be forced to bear these large events' impact? This is a separate use, a separate business. It will be considered for-profit by the IRS. That comprises a primary use, not an accessory use. It will have more impact. 2 of the large events the applicant intends are third-party concerts and dance hall style dances that have nothing to do with the nonprofit. These uses are not allowed in our R1CH district, even by conditional use permit. Third-party promoters could be promoting any type of event. I used to work in the music industry. Not all promoters follow the rules. Most promoters don't know the rules. How will the building's capacity be limited? What happens if alcohol is available? Planning and zoning did not have the authority to allow prohibited activities. They made a mistake in not changing the CUP to not have these events. I think they erred because they were overwhelmed. That might have been due to the lateness of the hour and the large amount of extremely vague information provided by the applicant. 200 pages of obfuscation never state the true intent of renting out the building as an event center, which is stated in the pre-application form. This might make any commission member too overwhelmed to take the time needed to change the CUP to one that they do have the statutory authority to grant, and that does conform to the notified uses. I'm asking you to please correct the error of providing this applicant with a special privilege of special events that are neither incidental nor subordinate. Those events are for profit and a primary business use. Please remove all overcapacity events and prohibited events like concerts and dance hall style dances and third-party loud noise alcohol things from the CUP. Please keep the capacity of the building at 60 in accordance with the building's main proposed use as a private school. The North End Neighborhood Association withdrew its support of the CUP once they learned of all this and what other neighbors are about to testify to. Please do the same. Thank you for your time, and I am open for any questions, but I don't want to take any of Brent's time. Thank you.
You can pause. Great. Looks like she talked fast. You've got 5 minutes.
Yes, I can.
No. She talked fast enough that you've got 5 minutes, which
Fair
was
enough.
your original hope.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I first want to respond to some things that Mr. Riddle presented. It is true that the special events code does not apply here. If you read Ms. Yautz's appeal, the reason she got off on special events, quote unquote, is because Leon Letson told her that the only thing that we're considering for this CUP in 2009 is ancillary functions and special events. That's why she went off on that tangent. She's right in theory, of course, but the section of the code of your code that does apply is section 11-06-01. City code disallows concert halls or dance halls in an RC1 district zone, even as it's not allowed even as a conditional use. There's only one exception. That one exception is if it is an auxiliary function of a church. So we're not talking about concerts. We're talking about church supper and those teen dances that we all probably suffered through. Not a concert center. And by the way, there ain't no church. If you've read the record, the NECC, North End Collective Church, has pulled out. So you'll be approving a concert hall. It was not beyond the legal authority of P&Z to approve this because at the time there was a church committed. There is not now. I would suggest that you would be exceeding your legal authority if you were to approve this. And perhaps the best thing to do is to remand this in light of the new information. Okay, that's my part of Ms. Yautz's appeal. Now I want to cover fire safety as quickly as I can.
Okay, wait a second though. I
Okay.
just, is this the other appeal
This
now?
is the other appeal.
Okay, great. So we're gonna start the timer again.
Can I go first then? Okay.
So everybody recognizes this is the second party.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Madam Mayor, just to confirm, we're going to 12 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. For the Planning and Zoning Commission to have approved an expansion of the use of this building to events including 350 people with not a single fire or safety requirement or consideration is arbitrary and capricious. It is also not based on some of the assumptions under that are not based on any substantial and competent evidence. And I'll explain that. First of all, since the new building code doesn't apply to an existing building, that's why they get away with not having any sprinkler system and no fire alarm system to protect those beautiful exposed wooden beams inside the church building. And that seems to be, as Mr. Riddle said in page 4 of his cover letter for your appeal document, neither ACHD nor the fire department opposed this application. That's not true. I say that's not true. If you look through the record, there's no indication that they were ever asked. And in the process, I contacted Carl Westfall, who's the plans examiner for your fire department. It was news to him. A woman named Laurel, who'd just been, and I didn't get her last name, with the fire department, never heard of it. Brian Barber, never heard about it. Fire Marshal Jerry McAdams has not heard about this until I called him. Even Officer Moreno, the compliance officer for the police department, didn't know anything about it. So don't tell me that this is justified because the fire department had no objection. And in the appeal document, in your document, there are about 24 conditions listed, by P&Z. None of them have to do with fire and safety. This is supposed to have just been an update of a CUP that was granted in 2009. Unlike this CUP, that CUP included requirements from the fire department. And in a letter addressed to Mr. Riddle from Mark, pardon me, Centeno of August 11th, 2009. The Boise Fire Department can approve the application subject to compliance with the following, : all fire department access roads, fire lanes, have to have a minimum of 20 feet. When you have cars parked on both sides of that 30-foot street, I measured 14, she measured 15 feet, but it's not 30 feet. Minimum outside turning radius of 48 feet, inside turning radius of 28 feet. That is not met there. For streets having a width of less than 36 feet, and that road out in front is 30 feet, back, let's see, less than 36 feet, curb parking shall be restricted to one side. We don't have that now. People are parking on those, people who live there park there. Are you going to restrict parking on one side of 14th Street or Hayes? Thirdly, this again from the fire department's letter of 2009. They have to comply with the International Fire Code, which you've incorporated into city code. Suez, on the, I think, the third page of their initial application. What's the required amount of water flow? 3,000 for this kind of operation. According to Suez, theirs is 2,000. I would suggest to you that under these circumstances, not only was it arbitrary and capricious and not based on substantial and competent evidence, it's also damnable and irresponsible. Thank you.
Boy, this is difficult. Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Kelly Olson. I live at 1307 North 13th Street. So I live one street off the main corridor that we're talking about here. And we appear a little disorganized. There were many 14th Street neighbors who joined me in this appeal, including Brent, who lives at 1207 North 14th Street. So to be clear, I live outside the 500 feet notification process. So I relied on the big signs that are posted and required under city code. Okay, those signs were very misleading. Those signs said this is going to be a CUP hearing about the church or the school that we've all been aware of. We've been watching it emerge in our region, in our area. We've watched the construction, reconstruction of the building. I've been most impressed by that. But then we hear about the addition of a church, and then it stops there. There was absolutely no discussion about these additional events. And that's really the crux, I think, of our appeal, okay? So I want to talk about both the what and the where, okay? I'm going to be mindful of the time here. The what. The city staff and the applicant want you to believe that what we're talking about here is a nonprofit children's school and a church. That sounds really good, okay? But there is a lot more going on here, okay? We want to make two essential points tonight, okay? A return of a church to this historic building might make sense to many of us. It sounds good, okay? My grandmother attended that church, and I went with her when I would visit. I didn't grow up in Boise, but I visited as a child. I went to that church. It had inadequate parking then, okay? And it ended in the late 1960s. I don't have enough time to tell you about personal stories about my grandmother who drove, she was 4'11", drove a very large Oldsmobile. You can picture it, right? And she could not successfully parallel park in that neighborhood. My grandfather paid for 4 different parking accidents that my grandmother and I were involved in. Now, of course, I've wasted my valuable time to tell you that story, but it is a true story. Okay, so in the late 1960s, parking was inadequate, and this church left that building, okay? The parking situation has gotten worse. Okay, we need you to truly understand and take you to that area. This is one block off the most busy intersection of the Hyde Park district. One block. Okay, one block west of the most busy intersection. We're talking today 30 businesses that the city has permitted in the Hyde Park Business District. We're talking about 13 of those are bars and restaurants, which bring, by its very nature, a daily influx of cars to our area. Now, where do these cars park? They park everywhere. They now overflow at least 3 to 4 blocks beyond the Hyde Park district. Okay, we need you to understand that despite the fact this is a very dynamic urban area, it has placed a very heavy burden on the residents. And that is what our appeal is about. Both the what, the big events that'll bring a lot of cars, and a lot of people, a lot of parking congestion. We need you to think about the where. Okay, this is not 18th and Eastman, where a church used to operate. This is 14th, right off of the Hyde Park district. Okay, so I want to talk a little more about the traffic impacts. There was absolutely no data presented in this hearing, planning and zoning hearing. There was no data to fully evaluate the impacts on the residential zone area. We would argue that because of this lack of data, and despite the fact it's well mentioned that traffic impacts can be expected, but again, not quantifying, that there was a lack of substantial evidence to support the Planning and Zoning Commission decision. How am I doing on time? We believe that constitutes a condition of appeal. Okay. Now imagine the gridlock that's created by the drop off and pickup of 120 people attending the school and church events throughout the year. Okay. This was a concern expressed actually by some of you in this room in the 2009 CUP consideration. Okay. And again, the conditions have only gotten more difficult with an increase in the anticipated attendees. Back in 2009, they were talking about 45. Today, we're talking about 120, potentially 180, and then the applicant's going to rent out the building to potentially 350 people. It is quite complex and complicated. You need to look at the record of the planning and zoning hearing. Many of those commissioners just couldn't keep those numbers straight. That should be a concern to you, okay? Imagine every Sunday, 180 attendees are going to arrive for each service. There's going to be 2 of them, okay? Back-to-back services we anticipate. Okay, so there's going to be 2 services per Sunday, a total of 104 church services throughout the year, okay? It is likely to bring more traffic to this area, and yet there was no quantification of this traffic impact. The city claims that ACHD signed off on this. Well, we see no evidence of that. What we see is in the 2009 CUP that they actually raised some concern about the traffic, okay? They talk about trip generation and analysis for the report that they generated in 2009 was based on 45 students per session. They go on to say any additional uses, such as events and large gatherings that may be requested by the applicant and has been requested by the applicant, have not been evaluated. This is what the ACHD is saying. They talk about additional uses would impact the transportation system. Okay, so we see no evidence that ACHD has signed off on this project as it's anticipated and envisioned today. Okay, I want to wrap up about parking. Okay,
30-second warning.
Okay, how many?
30 seconds.
Geez, the parking study, time goes fast. Parking study was both inadequate and inaccurate. Okay, I'm not going to question the number of parking stalls that they counted out on the street. They did a pretty good job. But if every one of those street parking stalls that they counted was used for parking for their events, we would turn our area into a parking lot. Okay? Some of these parking stalls
Madam Mayor,
will no
time.
longer exist. May I just finish that one thought?
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, thank you very much. Okay, this is an important thought because it's very relevant to
Succinctly.
today. Okay, some of the parking stalls they counted in their large expanded parking study will no longer exist. Some of them have been converted to dining in the Hyde Park district. Those parking lots don't exist anymore. Okay. Second, several of these parking spaces they counted and would represent to you as available for their attendees will no longer exist after the 13th Street traffic calming begins next year. Okay, we're going to have bulb outs at 5 intersections on 13th Street. So they're going to lose at least 2 parking spots. So in summary, we think there are serious flaws to the presentation that was given to Planning and Zoning Commission. We recognize the hurdle is high. We really appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
A question for staff, and maybe if staff can't address it, maybe John can address it. Is that all right? John, if staff can't address it, it's worth an hour.
Oh, yes, and
Yeah.
his, sure, yeah.
So Cody, in 2009, when this was approved, I'm sure it says it in the packet and I'm just not seeing it. Is there anywhere that it says what the occupancy was in the building in 2009? Max?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, the ACHD comments from 2009 the ACHD Commission did approve the project and noted that their analysis at that time was based on, I think, the 45 students that was noted, and provided a cautionary note to the city in terms of other uses that were beyond that.
And was there a separate max occupancy for the building itself? It was just 45?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, that was simply ACHD's analysis based on the trip generation on a student count. I mean, this 10,000 square foot building, the occupancy load or allowance is significantly greater than that.
Yeah, it seems like it'd be greater. The building that I occupy has a much larger occupancy than that, and it's a much smaller building. I guess my question and what I'm trying to figure out is, so the fire department approved the building, the use, the exits, all these different types of things in 2009 when they thought that was going to be the max occupancy of the building, or however many people could be in there. And I'm just wondering if that's changed since then, and if the different use of the building has to trigger a new fire inspection, a new anything, or since the max occupancy is a little bit larger, it would still follow under the same guidelines.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, I actually checked with the building and fire folks this week, and the last occupancy permit for this building was for the church years and years ago. They don't have any occupancy permits since that time. And so the last valid occupancy permit was for a church. They don't consider what was proposed in 2009 or now to be a change in occupancy, and thus that they can't impose new requirements for fire sprinklers, reevaluate fire code and things like that. And I would just note that those permits they obtained in 2009, while the planning entitlements expired, the construction permits are still very much active.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yep, go ahead.
Cody, while you're there, I have a couple of questions. I just want to clarify some things. So the occupancy, the size of the building, according to building code, if I read the record correctly, the code would allow 634 people occupancy limit in a building this size. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, it was 600 and it was beyond 600. And I would note that the conditions of approval actually cap everything far lower than that.
And if I'm reading correctly, that original occupancy permit that you quoted the fire department having found was for 800 and some. Is that also correct?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, I don't recall the 800 number, but I do the 600 and
Okay.
again, we're well below that.
That was in the record. So what we're proposing, what is being proposed today in this conditional use permit is that on a daily basis, no more than 120 individuals and no more than 108 of those can be students.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that's correct.
And if there is a church use, no more than 180 persons up to 2 times per day each Sunday.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that's correct.
And in addition to those, that TRICA would be allowed 1 event per month of up to 180. Yes?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that's correct. There's a long list of conditions I'm reading back.
Yeah, I know. I just want to make sure I have gotten these correctly because we've heard a lot of things already tonight. Daytime use is limited from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Sunday.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I think maybe what we're after here is what is a special event perhaps we're using the wrong term. As I look at our zoning code, I wonder if this in fact fits the definition of what we would call a social event center, which can be associated with a church and is a conditional use in a R1C zone. Is that what is being proposed, or under what other definition and what other code standard would we allow simply special events?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, yes, social event centers are, I believe, a conditionally allowed use in this zone, as are churches and the private commercial school. From our perspective, it's the same standards of review, same findings in terms of compatibility, impact, things like that for all of those. Those findings do not change. And from our perspective, both the private commercial school or public schools and churches all have all kinds of those events that honestly, we, even with new proposals, we haven't conditioned to nearly this extent.
And so in allowing this to also serve as a social event center, we've conditioned that to only 20 per year, but we've allowed that those events could be up to 350 people, but only if there is off-site parking. Is that also what I'm reading?
That is correct.
Okay, let me read, as I'm reading social event center, an establishment for weddings, birthdays, dances, celebrations, and other similar special events. That's still pretty broad, but not exactly what I would consider a concert hall. Is there anything in our code that would limit the kinds of events in a social event center other than that definition?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, no.
Okay. However, as these events happen, they would still be required to meet the 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. standard. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that's correct. It does that second condition references trike activities and events are limited to those hours.
And any amplified noise would have to meet our noise ordinance requirements. Yes?
Correct.
And in order for this building to get an occupancy permit, the fire department will in fact have to inspect it, as will the building department.
Madam
Yes?
Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, certainly.
Okay, so I guess my final question is something that's not in the record. And as I looked at this, I wondered if we have ever conditioned a social event center to be required to essentially get a yearly special event permit, which would look at their liability insurance, look at those kinds of things, or are those somewhere else within some of the licensing that we require for this kind of a building?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, I can't speak to the specifics of the other licensing. What I would say is with this permit and this approval, because it is so very unique and in a constrained location, unique location, we suggested that condition for an annual review where we can sit down with the neighbors, with the applicant, and reevaluate conditions and perhaps change things at that time. That was a kind of our best approach to the uniqueness of this situation.
Okay. And then I guess one last question. If we were to allow this tonight, the idea has been brought up that it would be unusual for us to enforce code issues in a building like this. It's my understanding that we enforce occupancy numbers all of the time. I guess probably the unique thing in this case would be enforcing offsite parking. And have we talked to the clerk's office about how they would attempt to administer that?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, the condition related to offsite parking is something the applicant would be obligated to provide documentation to planning staff ahead of these events. There's also a condition that they maintain a website with a calendar to where the neighborhood is informed of these events ahead of time.
All right, thank you. That helps me a lot.
Other questions before we head on to the applicant? No. All right. Come on up. Oh, and before you start, John, there were two people that are signed up on here that are not parties of record, John Dobson and Jeff Simmons. And I wish I'd flagged it before so that, are you here? No. Oh, so maybe they were the people that were here for the water hearing. I just wanted, if you were sitting here, to let you know that you wouldn't be able to testify. So no John Dobson or Jeff Simmons. Okay, thanks.
My name is Sean Swarthout. I am a fourth generation Idahoan, and I grew up right here in Boise and a graduate of Capitol High School. I began getting involved in local theater productions as a young boy myself and pursued dance, and was lucky enough to be able to go to Houston Ballet Academy and work with the Joffrey Ballet in New York and meet many inspiring people throughout that time. It was always my dream to bring what I learned from around the world back to Boise and reach the youngest members of our city, the youth. The TRICA program began 25 years ago with immediate success and growth, and filled a gap that was needed by many families and many children across the entire Treasure Valley. And then, like many people for years, walked by that building on the corner of 14th and Eastman. And it was easy to see someone needed to do something with that building. Who the hell was going to do it? What group? It was listed as one of the most endangered and threatened historic sites in our entire state. Many moms pushed their buggies of babies along that and thought the same thing. The effort of TRICA began. Over 2,700 citizens of this city and the Treasure Valley have invested deeply in this project to bring it to this point. And this is why we stand here tonight, because we are on the verge of being able to tell the construction crew to put on their hard hats or to not. Now, what's going to go on in this space is an amazing program. And if you would simply roll the film at this point, I want to paint a picture of what this project is about.
Just a sec, I apologize.
We can pause it for a second.
It's a lot of pressure doing this with a crowd.
I don't know how you remembered all those things you had to click to get there.
I probably won't again.
And students gather right in here, right up next to me. Clap. Front. Good. TRICA is a loose acronym for the Treasure Valley Institute for Children's Arts. And this building will be the center for learning and the arts.
You're waiting around. Good thing you went working.
When you walk in the doors, there's just a peace that comes. And I think it's built into the structure of this building. It's built into the foundation of it. It was meant to be that. It was meant to be a place that gathers people.
When children pull up to this place, by the sheer nature of the outside of the building, it's going to draw them in because it looks like a castle that is amazing and they're going to want to come inside.
It's like a spotlight is on them, and it's just a space that's awe-inspiring.
Just really helped me like embrace myself, and like dancing, you have to really get into it and like do some moves that might be out of your comfort zone, so it helped with my self-esteem and confidence.
We've taken the necessary effort to get the building stabilized. We've taken the necessary efforts to enclose the shell, if you will, replace windows. This place was contaminated with meth and about to collapse and fall down, and it actually would have been cheaper if it did and was leveled and a new building was built. But we saved it, and it's worth it. And we get to drive by it and see the beauty. We get to come in it and see the beauty, and we get to talk to the families and children that pass through these doors and see the beauty in them sharing about the programs that they've experienced here and the light in their eyes. Yeah, both knees bent, very good.
Well, I think if you love children,
Oh,
if children speak to you at all, this would be something that you would want to invest in, because this will be something that will stay with the child all their life. Their experiences that they will experience through the TRICA programs.
This isn't just John's vision. This is everybody behind John. It's everyone supporting John. It's the foundations. It's the community outreach. It's my team and my staff, our engineers. It's all of you who recognize that in the North End is this beautiful, beautiful piece of fabric that were it cut out of the big quilt would be a vast hole. It would be difficult to fill. Could I have both of you stand up, please?
You know, somebody had to have inspired and motivated Mr. John to be as wonderful as he is to children. And those are the same things that those children will then be able to carry on. And it takes a beautiful building, it takes a space for that to continue. John has done a wonderful job working at so many different schools. He could hit so many more people and so many more families he could make an impact on if he were to have all those families come to him in one space.
And if everyone helps at their own capacity, it will happen.
Kids need all kinds of ways to express themselves as we do as adults. And this building, you know, it allows them to be a child with energy.
We've had to come in and stabilize. We've had to build the backbone so that we can hang on that surfaces that make this is going to make this a beautiful place. Run like the wind, yes, go! Yes, this building's wonderful, but it's the things that are going to happen both inside it and out that are profound and important. We've got to have everyone contribute something in one way or another to make this happen. The reason it will happen is just simply because we didn't give up. We did our best and then just didn't stop doing our best with this project. We just didn't give up. And over time, it will help. And we need people. We need donors to do their best by making a donation and being a part of it. And now I would like to ask a local architectural icon to come up and speak as well, Andy Erstad.
Madam Mayor, council members, I'm not sure that I'm an icon and I have a few seconds to chat. I'm here to just say staff has done a remarkable job in pulling together all of the information from our 2009 application. And while we were unable to complete it in the time frame, the sunset window, this is what this application is about. It's to carry it forward and get it done. I want to clarify a few points from what Brent commented on, and that is an insinuation that fire department is irresponsible and not doing reviews and that the highway district hasn't done their jobs. The point of clarification is that in a CUP application, they take a quick look at things. What he doesn't understand, or what he didn't maybe have a reference to, is the building department looks at everything, and the fire department literally signs off on the plans. They're circulated to Public Works, they're circulated to fire, they're circulated to the highway district, they're circulated to plumbing, mechanical, electrical. Everyone has a bite at the stake. And so this building would not be going on if it were unsafe, and if any of those agencies didn't feel like it was taken care of. So I want everyone to have confidence that we're not building a building and nobody knows a doggone thing about it. Everyone knows everything about it in the building departments and all the departments that respond to it. I appeal to you all to, and I think to deny this appeal. And I think Councilmember Clegg really, in her line of questions, really sort of pulled the layers of the onion back and got to the real point. This is not about a knitting factory type public bash hall, thrives, raves, et cetera, all those things. I don't quite have all the terminology. This is really about a school and then the potential for a church. Brett commented that there is no church. The church did pull out, but the opportunity for a church, I think, is equally important to maintain, so that if a church comes along, that has an opportunity. We're not back in front of you. So we ask you to deny the request or the appeal and uphold the Planning and Zoning Commission's unanimous decision. And believe me, it was a long evening, and they really did look at all the issues. So, thank you.
Madam Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yes, of course. I think there'll probably be some questions for both of you, but Andy, I'd stay where you're at.
Yeah, either of you which wants to answer, but what are your comments regarding the potential for 20 events each year? What is that entail? What are you envisioning for that?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Thompson, I'm going to ask John to comment on the 20 events that would be larger events. I'll make one comment. The occupancy of the building is 634. That occupancy is dictated by square footage. And so this CUP actually takes that limit and limits it down to the 350 max limit. So about half of the carrying capacity of that building on the 2 floors. Do you want to talk about the 20 events?
Yes. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, everyone. Thanks. Those community events would be anything where if someone wanted to get married in the facility, if there was a memorial funeral service in the facility, as long as it complied within the restrictions that we have with hours and numbers and was not in direct violation to TRICA in any way, that would be something that the community could use. We have gotten requests from when we first started this project by everything from brownie troops to people wanting to use it as a COVID safe site because it is so large. And so that would be something that would be at the discretion of TRICA as long as it fell under the approved guidelines that we have received.
So I've got a question. I never know these days if I'm in play, so I'm asking questions also. Back in 2009, I was on Planning and Zoning Commission when we saw this.
I remember.
But if I read this correctly, you applied for a church and school then, a permit then. And so why again? I mean, the church isn't a new piece, correct?
The allowed use of a church was approved back then, but that was nothing that we intended. That was just simply an allowed use by the nature of the approval. And perhaps Cody could
That's what I
speak
wanted. That's
better
what I
to
wanted to make
this.
sure. And so back in 2009, when it was approved, it was the allowed use was both what you proposed to do with Trica, but also the church was an allowed use as well. And so are we hearing this again because the allowance expired and so you've resubmitted? I mean, I'm trying to get at the nuance that the appellants brought up around an application that includes a use of a church, which then would give you an allowance for different kind of events, whether or not that's different from what happened in 2009.
Madam Mayor, if I may, the history of the process was in 2009, we brought to council the use of the conditional use. The approval was granted. There was a sunset put on the approval that was required to have building occupancy.
And that's why you're back in front of us.
We're back because we can't achieve the cost of the project and the remediation and all of these things that were not necessarily anticipated took longer to achieve, and then the cost expanded. So we were not able to achieve the occupancy in 19, and that's what triggered the reapplication. At that point, John had been approached by a church, so we, full disclosure, said, well, church wants to come in here too. Let's define how the church could be part of this facility and what it would entail. And I think therein lies some of the concern from the neighbors, is that originally it was Trica with a series of events allowed, and then the church. And so as we try and define the limits on the church, that's part of this application. But the church use is an allowed use. And so as is the school.
So you're not, right, so the use was established in 2009. You haven't changed how you want to use the building, but you're here in front of us because you weren't able to finish the project and occupy the building by the time of the sunset provision that was put in place.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wanted just to make sure that that's.
And most
where we're at.
CUPs, for the record, most CUPs have a sunset clause. So so you don't get it and then just extend it out further and further. I guarantee you, Trica has been spending very real money trying to get this thing buttoned down. And if you haven't walked by, walk by. It's remarkable.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
I have a question about fire, and I'm not sure if it's for Cody or if it's for you, Andy. One of the concerns that's come up from neighbors is fire remediation in the building. Can you kind of explain to me as an architect what that looks like when you're renovating, restoring a historic building and trying to deal with like current fire codes and retrofitting and that type of thing?
Madam Mayor, Council Member Woodings, that's a great question. And I was trying to clarify that for everyone. When you submit for your building permit, everyone has a look at the plans. And so the plans come into the city and they get routed. When the set goes to the fire department, they do a full review of everything that's proposed for in this case, the renovation. And they don't just look at building type, which is the construction technology. They look at occupancy, which is the number of people that the code allows on both levels. They look at exiting out of the space. So do the exits, are they separated by enough distance? Do they take you out to directly outside or through a protected route outside? And they look at the square footage of the building, and the square footage of the building tells them whether or not fire sprinkling is required. That does not take away from alarm systems, fire smoke alarms, all of that stuff still is all about life safety. That building has from the basement, it has 3 ways out. Or the lower level, and then from the main level, it has it'll have 4 ways out. 3 that I would count, and then it will have an elevator in it. You do not get to count the elevator as an exit route. So, so we have exceeded the fire department's any questions that they would have. They go by the code, the International Fire Code, IFC. That Fred's comment was very accurate. And the code we were approved under was the code at the time we submitted the documents. It's an 09 building permit number. So fire department looks at this stuff and takes it very seriously. And they also look at the building and the placement and access to and from it. And so I can't second guess the fire department. I'm not sure that anyone in this room can second guess the fire department. We make these submissions. We meet with them prior to submitting. We also respond to any questions and comments they have as a condition of the approval for the building permit. And so we have a building permit, which means we've achieved all of the expectations and the conditions the fire department has put on this project.
Great, thank you. So that includes things like the building being fully alarmed for smoke and that kind of thing, or what does that entail for specifically the Trinket building?
You have to meet a whole series of life safety conditions, which would include fire smoke alarms, CO2 alarms, horn strobes, very noisy, very bright flashing. We have them in this room here. If the fire alarm goes off, you know it's going off. It's both audible and it's visual. So the fire department makes sure those conditions are identified on the drawings. They're in the plans themselves. And our engineers are also very attuned to all of this. Our mechanical and electrical engineers, our plumbing, structure, you name it. They all are put under the same scrutiny when the plans go through the Boise City Building Department.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Andy, a question for you and then one that is either for you or John. Tell me about the planned ADA access. Will it be both passive and active? You mentioned an elevator. Will there also be a passive entrance exit for ADA?
Madam Mayor, Council Member Clegg, great question. The accessibility for both the lower level and the upper level will be done by elevator. That elevator access is off of the alleyway, and there's not a passive ramp system. We would have had to kind of circle the building to get the ramp system up. Historic buildings have you have different opportunities to achieve the accessibility requirements. I will tell you, just as a point of clarification or maybe a editorial point, I sit on the Intermountain Fair Housing Council, and accessibility is not only huge to me, it's huge to my firm. How we achieved accessibility in this building was through the elevator, and it meets the city's requirements. We did look, I'm being very candid, we looked at a number of opportunities to try and get a ramp in, and it just, there's just not the distance, the run that you need to achieve the vertical lift or the vertical height gain, either high up to the main level or down low to the lower level.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So the next question, we've heard a lot about special events tonight. As I'm reading our code, what you actually fall under is a social event center. It doesn't specifically call that out that I can find in the reasons for decision or the conditional use. Is that your understanding of what it is you're being allowed with those 20 events a year?
I'm not sure that I completely understand the question correctly, Mrs. Clegg.
Well, in our code, there are certain things that are allowed or conditionally allowed within residential zones. Event centers as being referred to by the appellants, frankly, are not allowed. However, social event centers, an establishment for weddings, birthdays, dances, celebrations, and other similar special events, so it does say special events, are allowed. And I just wanted to clarify that we're not talking about a concert hall or a dance hall. We're not talking about a club, that we are talking about a social event center.
Yes, that is correct. The Knitting Factory is an event center, very similar in square footage. They have an occupancy of 1,000. They're open till 2 a.m. They have a bar and a restaurant inside. They allow smoking. The restrictions in place, not that we would want to do those things anyways, but I do want to point out the difference in what an event center is and what TRICA is, falling under the social event center.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
just kind of following up on Council President Clegg's question with some of the 20 events throughout the year. So in the conditions for A, it says, with exception of the 8 spaces along the alley, all event parking shall occur off-site. And then in D, signed parking agreements shall be in effect for such events. I guess I'm curious as to where those off-street parking and what those types of plans that will have to be submitted to our planning team, what that looks like in your eye, and like what opportunities are out there for those off-site parking.
When we approached this in 2009, we had some formal conversations with the owners of the parking lot on Albertsons at 17th and State. And that would be a place that was off-site where we could provide shuttle and satellite parking when those events occurred. And so it would be TRICA's responsibility if we ever exceeded those restrictions in place to make sure we had provided that. And although I do not personally think this is going to get a whole lot of use, we do take that responsibility and take it very seriously and would make sure that that was provided. And some of the ideas are to even make it fun if there was perhaps a trolley involved. So we do understand those restrictions and assume the responsibility within TRICA of making sure we would provide that for those times when we needed to provide that shuttle parking.
Other questions?
Madam Mayor, one question for staff.
Yes.
Cody, my question has to do with the conditions. There's a layer of conditions that pertain to time, type of use, hours of the day, things like that. And then there's a separate condition that says no more than 20 events per year. Those 20 events still need to comply with that first layer of conditions. My question is, what is the purpose of the 20 events layer? What is it accomplishing that we don't already accomplish with the sort of time, place, manner type restrictions that we're already putting in place? And the reason I'm asking is I'd like to understand your process and what you were trying to accommodate there, because I would hate to see a beautiful, fantastic, wonderful building sit there and not be put to use because it's subject to a condition that maybe we didn't need.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Bajent, that's a very, very good question. I think our thought there with capping the number of events in addition to, the hours and other things was to ensure that the events or the social event component remained accessory to the primary use of the facility as a school and church. So it kind of gets at some of the questions that Councilmember Clegg was asking. And so by capping that, it clearly was accessory to the day-to-day, church and school use. And I would
was that
just
a cap placed in 2009, or is that a new condition?
Madam Mayor, these are very similar to the conditions that were in place in 2009.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bajent, if I may just briefly, I would note, We understand that this is a long list of conditions and very different than what we're accustomed to, and thus the annual review that's written in there. Maybe we come back in that 1 year and things are working great, and that number increases or is removed. So we really have a year to test that out.
Thank you. That was going to be, I guess it's probably appropriate for discussion later, but I also, we should be mindful, I think, as we go through this, like what kind of regulatory compliance burden are we setting up for the parties in the city in perpetuity? But I think that discussion is for later and not now in the middle of the testimony.
Okay, we're going to take a break. Next up is going to be Nina. So Autumn, look like Autumn Street, I think is what I read. Represents Nina. She'll be the next testifier, but she's on Zooming. Yes. Oh, you're not done?
Well, Mayor McLean, I was just wondering, since we do have 2 minutes left, I would like to share one more thing, if I could, before that break.
Sure.
Since we still have the 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to validate the appeal. I share with you your concern for traffic, parking, safety, notification, compliance. I take it very seriously, and I agree with you in making those things important. I do not agree with your appeal in regards to that, and I do ask that you deny the appeal. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, thanks. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back here realistically almost 8:05. Will you guys close those doors, please? Oh, did we completely turn? Did we lose the other people? Or is this just the screen, the break screen? Okay.
I'm here, Mayor.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. First off, there are a couple folks, Clerk, could you please let me know the names of the people? There are a couple folks that have your little Zoom hands raised that are not parties of record. And so only parties of record can speak tonight. So I just wanted to address that now so you aren't hanging out in a Zoom waiting room and then not able to testify. Shar, who are the people?
Madam Mayor, I do have 3 people with their raised hands. Only Sarah Forager is a party of record. Jillian Wigglesworth and Daniel Forager are not.
Okay. Jillian, and then who, Daniel? I'm just doing a double check myself.
And Madam Mayor, I all of a sudden have a whole bunch of raised hands.
All right, you didn't have to raise your hands right now if you didn't want to, but we're going to have Nina. So will you unraise your hands, please? Because we need to know who Nina is. Do we have Nina ready?
Yes, that is Amber. Excuse
Autumn?
me, Autumn.
Close. Okay, great. So Autumn, we'll have you go ahead and give your testimony, and then everybody with your hands raised. Sure. We're going to start with a couple folks in the room because there's hardly anybody here, and then we're going to go to the Zoom folks. First, I'm going to call through by order of people that signed up and that are parties of record, and then any of you that haven't been called by then, you can then raise your hands if you want to testify.
Madam Mayor.
Wait, who's that?
That was me.
Oh, sorry.
Madam Mayor, on our break, it was pointed out to me by Councilmember Thompson that in the past, I've been a donor to TRICA. I actually have a very long history as a TRICA supporter. To that end, I spoke to our legal counsel who suggested that I recuse myself on this vote because of that history and a potential conflict of interest.
And so are you saying, council member, that you believe that this is not a de minimis interest, or would you prefer that we find that it is a de minimis interest?
Legal counsel suggested I recuse. If council does decide that it's a de minimis interest, I support that and am happy to vote. But I wanted to leave that up to my colleagues.
And the nature of your involvement is both as a donor and
I have been a donor to TRICA. Also, I was involved in the North End Neighborhood Association as the president during their last conditional use permit hearing in 2009.
all right. Council?
Madam Mayor.
Yep. Is that Patrick?
Yeah, Nina's on one side of this, I think, and TRICA is on the other. And it's difficult for me to imagine how the council president pro tem could be harmed by way of her contribution to an organization with a stake in here. So it sure seems de minimis to me.
I'll invite a motion then.
I would move to, I'm struggling with the phrasing, to conclude this is a de minimis conflict. What's the best phrasing, Council President?
Yeah, that's good. We have a second?
Second.
Great. Motion and 2 seconds. I think it's been discussed. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings.
Do I recuse myself
Nope.
from this vote?
Nope.
Oh,
You're in, sorry.
yes.
So
Motion carries.
I actually probably need to do the same thing. Councilman Thompson let me know that I was listed as a donor. I'm going to say to that, I was like, why would I have donated? Because my children did not participate in TRICA. However, if you read the record from 2009, I was on Planning and Zoning Commission, and I said then that a friend of mine was on the board, and then his wife was representing TRICA at the time. They had an event that I imagine that I probably wrote a check at. So it's the same thing. We've got to figure out what you guys want me to do. In theory, I shouldn't be voting, but we'll see. But I was on I can't remember how I voted in the 2009 hearing. I'm sure the parties know. But I ruled on this issue back in the original permit.
Madam Mayor, I would move, just as Councilmember Bajent moved, that I see this as clearly de minimis and would vote to keep you in case of a tie.
Okay.
Second.
Madam Mayor, brief discussionary comment. If you can't remember how you voted, I think that's strong evidence that it is de minimis. And so I'll be supporting the motion.
That was a long time ago is really what is strong evidence of. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
All right, thank you. Now with
Madam-
that,
Madam
Councilman
Mayor.
says you too.
Yeah, I need to ask. I think I've always been too poor to donate to poor TRICA. Sorry, John, but John is a good friend. So I don't know how far we go down this path, but if I need to be up for this as well, full disclosure, John's a friend.
Madam Mayor,
Go ahead, Council President.
we have always ruled that friendship is a good thing, not a bad thing. And you have no financial interest one way or the other. And if that's the case, I would rule that your friendship is a de minimis cause and that you should be allowed to vote. I move that.
Second.
A motion and second, clerk.
For clarification, Madam Mayor, who was the second?
TJ, was that you?
Thank you. Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, Autumn. So before Autumn starts, I have to say whoever it is on Zoom that had your mic open during the break and was telling somebody, maybe children, to close a door in somebody's house, you whoever this was had everyone here looking around trying to figure out which door needed to be closed, security walking in, ready to close the council chamber doors. So there was a little bit of levity before we all had to come up here and talk about potential conflicts.
And I'd love to know if, as people are testifying, if it was you telling somebody to close the door, because that was really, really funny.
Madam Mayor, I thought it was you.
You thought it was us?
I thought it was you.
All right, Autumn, welcome. Go ahead and you can get started.
Thank you. It was not me. I thought they were the doors to the chamber that you were talking about being closed, but apologies in advance first. It's if you hear crying in the background, it is way past baby bedtime, so I am being summoned. But before I leave, my name is Autumn Street. I live at 1415 West Fort Street, and I am here this evening representing the North End Neighborhood Association as I am their secretary. So this is the letter that our board voted to approve following our August meeting. Mayor McLean and City Council, at Nina's August meeting, testimony was heard from the North End Neighborhood Association members. Primarily, these were neighbors who live in the vicinity of the TRICA location at 14th and Eastman. After neighbor testimony and subsequent Nina board discussion, a motion was made and passed by the majority, though not unanimously, for Nina to withdraw support and remain neutral for the TRICA Cup appeal. The board did not vote to oppose the Cup application. Nina's position reflects neighbor concerns that the public engagement and/or traffic parking study processes were possibly flawed and should not be taken as a position against TRICA or the Cup application this evening. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions for Autumn? All right, I'm sorry to have held you until after the break. I figured.
It's okay. I'm happy to be here.
Okay. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Okay. So next up, we have those of you in the room. Are you Heather? Okay, and you, sir? Great. So let me make sure that you were party record, and then I'll have, yes. Why don't you come on up, sir? I'll have both of you are welcome to testify. There's just two people in the room for those of you in the Zoom chat other than the applicant and the appellants. So Mr. Pankey, come on up. And then Heather Harper, Ms. Harper. Great.
We're out here. My name is Eric Pankey. I live on the corner of 14th and Brumback Street with my wife, Susan. We're one block from the project. We have owned this home for 43 years, and we've always liked the activity in the North End. Over the past 40 plus years, I've worked as an elevator consultant, and I had the opportunity to travel all over the US, as well as Europe and Asia. I've always seen a variety of communities, and when I come back home, I recognize our neighborhood community is the best. What makes it the best are the people and the diversity. We support the TRICA team and the community usage they propose. It fits in with the diversity of the neighborhood, the effort they have made to preserve and restore the old church building demonstrates their passion to provide a safe, beautiful space to expand the arts and to have a desirable place for some planned community events. In our opinion, seeing this great structure being used as proposed is an enhancement to the area. And we have encouraged the council to uphold the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission and deny the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And now Heather Harper.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, good evening. My name is Heather Harper and I live at 1413 West Eastman Street in Boise. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf and in support of TRICA. I moved to Boise in 1990 and purchased my home on Eastman Street, adjacent to TRICA in 2008. I've lived here for the past 12 years. Because of my close proximity to TRICA, I've had a front row seat as the beautiful historic church, previously neglected and unused, has been painstakingly restored to near original condition. It's difficult to describe just how pleased I am to see this happening. I commend John Swarthout and his team for graciously persisting against all odds with this grand endeavor. I am blessed to live in the North End, thoroughly enjoying the unyielding charm and character. Although wonderful, it is not without challenges. The neighborhood is densely populated. The homes close together, cars, trailers, and other vehicles are abundant, and parking is extremely limited. Many homes have no garages, and many homeowners have 2 or more vehicles per driver, putting a strain on what is already a parking dilemma. These issues are bothersome, but I chose to live here, and I was aware of these issues prior to purchasing my home. I accept it. The building in question, now TRICA, was initially a beautiful church built and used as a church before all of us were born, I think, pretty much. My guess is that it was embraced by the people living in the neighborhood during that time. Many churches in the Boise area are also used as educational venues. Some offer childcare and vacation Bible school. Many have adult education classes. Some have food pantries. Some offer meals to those less fortunate. Most, if not all, churches have activities beyond Sunday service. TRICA is offering educational opportunities to children, experiences that are not available in the standard school curriculum. My understanding is that other events will be held. However, none will extend beyond a 9 p.m. curfew. And John knows that I'll be calling him if there's a problem. It's truly a gift for our community to enjoy. We should be embracing this and not condemning it. I highly doubt there will be many concerts. I think the 9 p.m. curfew will be self-limiting. Please honor inclusivity and sense of community for which North End is known, and celebrate all that TRICA has to offer. Please do what's right and deny this appeal. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for people in the room. So now we are going to move into the Zoom parties. So first up, we have Heather. Oh, Heather Harper, you signed up in advance. Okay. Nancy Neely. I think I saw Nancy on there at some point. We could see you. And then after Nancy will be Jodine Revere, and then Scott Key or Kai.
Got it. Okay, I got it. So Ted asked you to start your video. All right, how do you use video?
Nancy, just so you know, we can hear you talking, but as you've noticed, we can't see you. There you go. I just didn't want you to say.
Oh, well. Good to know that now. So can I start?
Yes, go ahead. You've got 3 minutes, and we'll let you know when there's about 30 seconds left in case you can't see the timer from there. And then for everybody that's on Zoom, please let us know.
Okay, thank you. Well, I am.
Even though I've called your name, everybody on Zoom, we just need your name and your address for the record before you start to testify.
Oh, okay. I'm on 2213 Judah Street in Boise, and my name is Nancy Neely.
Thank you, Nancy. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I am the first grade teacher that was on the video that John showed, and I have not changed my thoughts or feelings about the TRICA program, as I stated in the video. I taught first grade at Washington Elementary for 14 years, and many of my students went through the TRICA program, and now our granddaughter has been at Jump Building, and we are thrilled that she's a part of that program and seeing her grow and be a part of the TRICA philosophy for children. Her last words to John at the end of this summer camp were, "I am always going to dance with you, Mr. John." I mean, it's just the value of this program for children and for the families is beyond beyond words at times. It just what it does for the children. And I was a part of this when John first went into this building and saw what this church had become. It was falling down. It was a meth lab. This building ended up not being structurally sound. John has worked on this for over a decade to bring this to the north end. This is his home. This is his community. There isn't anybody that would take better care of the neighborhood, putting a business in a very tight spot than John. He will do his best to be a good neighbor. And I just hope that this will be approved and that we can all have this as a part of our community. And it's just as much of a treasure as the foothills are and what it brings to that area. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. And next up, we have Jodine Revere. Is she there? Nope. Okay. We'll circle back to see if Jodine comes later. Up there's Scott. Perfect. Scott, welcome.
Hi, my name is Scott Key, 1408 North 15th Street. Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. My wife, Suzanne Troji, and I fully support TRICA's use of the former Emmanuel Methodist Church and its mission to teach dance, music, and art to youngsters throughout the Treasure Valley. We live right across the alley from the proposed parking lot for TRICA and have been here for more than 10 years. We live in this neighborhood because it's close to the foothills, and we like to walk to and support the businesses in Hyde Park and walk or bike downtown and all across Boise. After we arrived, we quickly became TRICA supporters. Living so close, we've witnessed firsthand the hard work, passion, and craftsmanship, the blood, sweat, and tears that John Swarthout and the TRICA team poured in revitalizing this neighborhood landmark. It would frankly be a tragedy, a really lost opportunity for TRICA not to move forward, because we believe teaching the arts, music, dance, and humanities to the young is just as essential as teaching them STEM subjects. Dance and arts and humanities teach children the essentials of creative expression, collaboration, and sharing the joy of creation with everyone. It's a way to build bridges and foster a common understanding of what connects all of us, no matter our origins or our background. If TRICA doesn't move forward, all these priceless attributes and all the hard work, much of it donated, will be lost. John and the TRICA board didn't undertake this project to get rich or famous. They're doing it to foster love and understanding of dance and art for all. If TRICA doesn't move forward, think about what could take its place. Will the developer tear it down to turn a quick profit and build a huge out-of-place mansion or a multi-story apartment building? Or will it become an abandoned and neglected ruin symbolic of what it could have been if all our neighbors came together in support? I share my neighbors' concerns with traffic. My wife, Suzanne, is actively working to calm traffic in the north end. We invite our neighbors to join with her to support and work with Nina's Streets Committee and others who share this concern. I want to end my statement by saying it would be a true tragedy with too many unknowns if TRICA doesn't move forward. Let's focus on what we know for certain. We have an opportunity as a neighborhood to support a special place in our incredible community where kids, parents, all of us can come together and share a love of dance and the arts. That to me is worth more than any periodic inconvenience a teaching, church, and social event space during limited hours may cause. Let's come together and put aside differences to say an emphatic yes to TRICA, yes to city staff, and no to this appeal. Thank you. And I have a request. Would it be possible to have my wife, Suzanne Troji, testify next? She also signed up to give a statement and is also a party of record.
Yep, if she's right there in the same
Yeah.
living
Yep.
room.
She's, we're going to switch over.
Oh, just do here.
No, come it's easier.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, City Council, thanks very much for having the opportunity to reiterate our support for TRICA's conditional use permit. We moved, as Scott said, we moved to our home in 2010. We've had a front row view from our side window of the many improvements that have been made to the church. We've been very supportive of this project financially and otherwise, as it not only preserves a beautiful historic asset, but it will provide a great venue for TRICA and other social events. Our support remains with the conditional use permit. We were unable to participate in an earlier online meeting, but did follow up with the architect with one question/concern regarding the status of the alley. We did not receive a response to that question, and perhaps it's more appropriately addressed to the city. It looks like our backyard and garage are across from the proposed paved parking lot, and it also looks like it's proposed that the alley be paved in concrete. We were wondering if any thought had been given to permeable pavers or any other environmentally suitable surfaces. Some of the new alleys downtown are really well done, and as they result in a more filtered runoff of water to the Boise River, and they're not concrete. You know, the renovation of TRICA has been first rate. It would be great for the city to step up to contribute to alley improvements. Otherwise, our preference would be for the alley to remain unpaved. Other than that, we look forward to John Swarthouse and the TRICA board's vision finally coming to fruition. It's been a labor of love that should not be wasted. My husband, Scott Key, and I continue to support the Planning and Zoning Commission approval of the conditional use permit. Thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thanks, Scott. Good night.
You turn it
I
on.
imagine that your request to look at the pavers will be, might be brought up later in the evening. So thanks for flagging that. Okay, and then I had Eric Pankey, but that's you, right? Yes. Okay. Alexis Davis. Hi, Alex.
Hi, can you guys see me? Hi.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. So I lived Alexis Davis, 1320 East Warm Springs Avenue. I lived in the north end of Boise for 13 years. And I, of course, have followed with the beach rollers, you know, pushing terrible nuisance building all those years. And, you know, to me, kind of listening to the appeal, and I was involved in that last hearing, which was 3 hours long, very thorough hearing and very professionally conducted by P&Z. In my opinion, there is such a thing as working so hard to reduce negative impacts that we also reduce the potential for positive impacts. And I love history, you know, like Mrs. Clegg, I looked it up, and how many people was this church built for? Well, it was built for 800 people back in the day. So in 1907, everyone was thrilled to have this fantastic community resource. TRICA's use for this on a daily I just find that remarkable. And I believe that that was done in extreme sensitivity to the neighbors and to the neighborhood, and with a excess, just an extreme desire to make sure that it fits in beautifully to the neighborhood. I'm all for balance, but we just need to be mindful of the greater good and of the lack of community spaces for arts and culture, especially a space like this that's really safe and dedicated to the youngest people in our community. I think a little bit in the growth of the city of Boise, the youth may be the ones who are getting left behind. So I just kind of wanted to make those points and bring a little bit of perspective that when this glorious structure was unveiled, it was quite a hopping place. And I personally am very excited to see it become a hopping place again, even though I guess we are defining cars, I guess, sometimes as more important than people, which grieves me greatly. But it will be hopping again, and I want to salute everyone who's worked on it. And thank you for your time. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have David Gunyard, and then in parentheses it says Bunyard Heffernan. I'm not sure if that means there are two of you in the same house.
Madam Mayor, I don't see that individual online.
Okay. How about, I did see Kimberly Thompson a bit ago. Is she still there?
No, Madam Mayor.
If,
Excuse me, she is there.
great, I was going to ask her to raise her hand if, great, okay. And then after Kimberly will be Wendy Blickenstaff. You are muted. We can see you, but we can't hear you. You might want to check your audio source. Oh, you've muted yourself. No, we can't hear you, Kimberly. Now you've hit the mute button. So on the bottom left of your screen, there you go. Nope, still can't hear you. So on the little triangle to the right of where it says mute, if it'll give you options for audio source and microphone, you might want to look there. And if that doesn't work, then we'll move on while you try to figure it out. Yeah, sorry. So, know what? Keep working on it. And then if you figure it out, raise your hand and we'll get you back in line because I'm just going down the list. Do we have Wendy Blickenstaff?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so my name's Wendy Blickenstaff. I live at 1102 North 16th Street. I'm about three and a half blocks away from Trica. And my husband grew up in Boise, I grew up in Twin, and we moved back to Boise in 2005. And we actually looked at a house right down the street from that church in 2005. It was it's kind of near the Snow Cone Shack. And I asked the real estate person, I'm just like, what is going on with that building over there? And she's like, well, there might be some homeless people in there. There may be it could possibly be some meth situation. And that was just a no-go because I was like, I could deal with the church, but there was no way I was going to deal with this ambiguity of this giant structure. So we consequently bought the house, 3 blocks away. In all these places that we had lived before we moved back to Boise, like San Francisco and down in the LA area, I never could afford to live in a beautiful, nice urban neighborhood like this. All of the neighborhoods that had little places to eat mixed in with houses were all out of my price range. And so when we moved back to Boise, I was just so thrilled that there were like these little businesses peppered in with the housing. And as we've lived here, slowly those little businesses have closed up. The Hollywood Market went away. There's, little sign shop. I don't know what's going on there. The church over on 18th Street is becoming a single family dwelling. And I don't want to see that happen. I mean, the character of this neighborhood is an urban neighborhood. And I really feel for the people on the 14th Street. And I think that what they're crying out for is maybe some help from the city. Things could be done. You could shut the alleyway between 14th and 13th Street down just to residents, and that would give them a little buffer zone where they could pull their cars in and out. Residents will adjust. They'll start building garages like they do in San Francisco so they don't have to street park. So it won't matter about events. Maybe you should reimagine the parking at Camel's Back Park to accommodate some of the businesses on 13th Street. like take the corner off that doesn't really get used, and relocate the picnic tables.
30 seconds.
Even the little park that's this triangle park down at the end of 15th Street could become a little place that people could park for overflow. I mean, these are all ways that Portland and other cities that have gone from a small city to a bigger city have helped accommodate their neighbors. And like, I think they do have legitimate concerns, but when I moved to Boise, I knew that was a church.
Thank you, Wendy.
Yep.
All right. Kimberly, I've seen you in 3 different screens now. Are you ready?
Hold on.
Oh, yeah, we can hear you now. Okay.
Okay. Oh, okay. Here I am. Sorry.
Your phone, we see you through both.
Okay. All right.
Your computer.
There. I got rid of that one. Sorry, you guys. Hello, and thank you for your patience with me and my technical difficulties. Hello, Madam Mayor and council members. Thank you. I guess you need my address. It's 4300 Savoy Street, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, 29466. I am a 4th generation Idahoan, currently displaced in South Carolina, but that's a temporary thing. We're back here. And we still come home to Idaho a lot. I have the pleasure and honor of serving on the board for TRICA, and also the pleasure and honor of being John Swordhout's friend. So I know him as a friend, and also get to work with him on this endeavor that's just been a Herculean effort for this man. And I have the behind the scenes as well as what he's done business-wise and negotiating and, raising the amount of money that we've raised. And it's been a painstaking labor of love. And it makes complete sense that there be 4 or 5 or more people right there within the council themselves that are friends of John's, because everybody's touched by this. Like he said, every single person in the community has donated to this project. It's a labor of love. And just to address, I get what the North End people that are near there are saying, and I understand, and it's not a money-making endeavor. It's not going to be raves and like late night party scene. This is a community, a place that's going to be filled with and raise and elevate the frequency of the whole community. It's a legacy project. And I just ask all of you that you deny this appeal respectfully and allow TRICA to get those doors open. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kimberly. Okay. Next we have, it was great to see you. Good night. I know it's late there. Next we have Audrey Schwind. Hi there.
Hi. Hi, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Audrey Schwind, and I live at 1823 North 7th Street, the corner of 7th and Brumback. I'm the director of Boise's local chapter of Music Together, which is an early childhood music and movement program. At Music Together North End, we offer a family-based music curriculum that supports children and parents' musical growth in a playful, musically rich, and developmentally appropriate environment. Our organization hopes to partner with TRICA and John to utilize their building space to host our music programs. Practically speaking, this is what we're looking to do in the TRICA building space. We host weekly music classes for children and their parents, no more than 12 families at a time, and offer a collection of songs to sing and make music as a family. Classes are open to everyone. We plan to have scholarship programs available. No musical background is necessary, and we seek to serve everyone who wishes to share music with their young families. As such, we are in full support of TRICA's interest in permitting its space for the communal use of outside organizations. We see tremendous value in TRICA serving as a gathering place for our community and believe offering space to like-minded organizations will serve only to enrich our neighborhood. Thank you for your time and your support of both TRICA and Music Together North End's mission to serve and strengthen our community. I would please ask you to deny this appeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Audrey. All right. Lynette Hayes. I think I saw Lynette for a moment. Is Lynette still with us? Okay. And then after that, we've got Josie Erskine, which I think I saw Josie raise her hand.
I'm here and I think you can hear me, but not quite sure how to get my video on.
We can hear you, Lynette.
Okay. I'm not quite sure about how to get my video on, so should I just go ahead and speak?
Comfortable just talking. We can see a nice picture of you with your dog.
Oh, okay. I will just do that. Hello, my name is Lynette Hayes, and my address is 1317 West Eastman Street. I am directly across the street from the TRICA building. I am in agreement with the City of Boise's planning staff findings that there is no basis for this appeal. Like I said, I live directly across the street. I am also familiar with TRICA programs. And as an institute for children in the arts, I believe that this is an amazing addition to our community. I have even watched some of the past summer camp dance classes. My own niece and nephew participated. And just watching those children dance and learn and then perform for their parents, the smiles on the faces of all the children, I think, speaks for the benefits of these programs. I also have to mention what an improvement it has been visually to our little corner here. I don't know how many people remember what this building used to look like several years back before the TRICA crew started renovating it. It was just this monstrous old boarded up building with crumbling stones, and it really looked like there was no hope for it to be brought to life again. But with the fundraising and donations from local citizens who believe in the visions that TRICA has for the arts and for our community's children, this structure has been transformed into something really beautiful. I mean, stunning, really. Oftentimes when I'm out working in my front yard, people will stop to ask me, what is this building? Because it really is that attractive and they can see all the work that's been going into it. And when I tell them about TRICA and their vision for it as an institute for arts, people love to hear that. They are happy to hear that there's something like that going to be right here in our community and so accessible. And personally, I'm excited to see the space open. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynette. Ooh, sorry, that was fun. All right, Josie.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Good evening. My name is Josie Jensen Erskine, and I live at 20021 Hoskins Road, Caldwell, Idaho. I am in favor of TRICA, and I hope that you deny this appeal. I own and operate Peaceful Belly Farm. I have a CSA program, and the couple that has been my North End drop-off for 19 years have pre-existing conditions that make them vulnerable to COVID. Because of that, I reached out to John this summer and asked if I could use TRICA's porch for my CSA. Without hesitation, John said yes. John's like that. John is the closest thing to Mr. Rogers that Boise has. For the last 18 weeks, over 140 people have picked up their vegetables off of TRICA's porch on Wednesdays between 3 and 6 p.m., many of them walking or riding their bikes. And I imagine that only a handful of the neighbors even noticed that there was such a gathering of this size happening, and there was never any impact to traffic, and parking was never hard to find. On the first CSA pickup, John started talking to me about different classes for children, field trips, camps that we could collaborate on. He has a name for our farm and art collaboration. It's called FART. John has a vision of community, children, and that dang church. And who in their right mind would put so much love into that space with so many problems? Former Congressman John Lewis talks about good trouble, necessary trouble. To all of us, our good trouble looks different. Mine is climate change solutions through soil health and local food. But John, it's arts for children and a space for them. And that church is John's good trouble. TRICA needs diverse revenue streams. It's a smart business. The side rails that you have put on John with limited events, offsite parking, massive decreases in capacity is truthfully strangling, unprecedented, burdensome, and unfair. But John is okay with that because all he wants to do is teach children. The entire valley is growing and change can be hard, but this is good change. This is positive change. This is the good trouble. John has a mission. No child will be turned away because of lack of funds. The elephant in the room tonight is a car, not a person. And it breaks my heart that this hearing is even happening. Please choose hope and children over a car and parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Josie. So that's it for everybody that signed up in advance. I know there are more of you on, but first I want to circle back and see if Jodine has joined us or if David Gunyard has joined us.
Madam Mayor, they have not.
Okay. All right. So then for those of you that are still on Zoom and haven't testified, please raise your little hand and we'll go through and make sure you're a party of record and give you a chance to state your case.
Madam Mayor, our first speaker is Dana Zuckerman, and
Great.
on deck is Michael Adams.
And Dana Zuckerman, and then who?
Michael Adams.
Okay, great. Hi, Dana, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. Good evening or good night. I'm the vice chair of the TRICA board, and I just want to take this moment to clarify our mission. The Treasure Valley Institute for Children's Arts provides meaningful experience in the arts taught by outstanding and loving educators, inspiring the children of the Treasure Valley to develop values and attributes, contributing to a stronger sense of humanity, community, and goodwill. Our program for children's ages 2 through 12 includes summer dance camps, after school with TRICA, family dance night, world-class arts instructions for young learners, and exciting enrichment in preschools across the Treasure Valley. So that's who we are. We are not a nightclub. We are not a concert venue. We are a children's arts venue. I just want to address one thing that Councilmember Agent said. I too am concerned that the building will be underused because it is such a beautiful asset to our community. And I was concerned at one of the appellant's assertions that adaptive reuse is leading to increased activity. I see that as a very good thing for the community. And as a neighbor, I live on 905 North 18th Street. I definitely would prefer a children's arts center to an empty structure or obviously to a meth house. As an organization, we want to be open to the neighborhood and to the community to be an asset and not be a burden for anybody. And with that, I ask you to please deny the appeal for tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. And then I think I heard was there a Michael on deck? Michael Adams.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Michael Stuth Adams on 1315 North 14th Street. I'm encouraging you to accept the appeal by the 14th Street neighbors. I support the appeal by the 14th Street neighbors as I have lived on 14th Street since 1994 and understand how this new conditional use permit will negatively impact the neighborhood. Traffic today is much different than traffic of the past. Not a week goes by where a driver fails to yield to 14th Street traffic at Eastman despite there being stop signs on Eastman. As a bicyclist who travels Camelback Park daily, I fear being hit by a car. Often when I enter that intersection, I have to quickly apply my bicycle brakes due to an Eastman driver cutting in front of me due to not adhering to that stop sign. ACHD cannot be relied upon to make this intersection safe. So I'm asking that the city council approve the appeal, as TRICA's variance will undoubtedly make this intersection even more congested and dangerous. The parking study for this project done by Erstad Architects in June of 2020 was extremely faulty. The study was conducted during stage 3 and 4 of Idaho's reopening in the current COVID-19 pandemic. Hyde Park and 14th Street were a comparative ghost town to its usually lively feel and activity during that stage 3 and 4. Many Hyde Park businesses were closed during stage 3 and 4. If a study is to be conducted with accuracy, it needs to be completed again when this pandemic is over. Alternative transportation was discussed as a method of traveling to TRICA. In fact, page 73 of 100 of the conditional use permit project report references the Valley Ride bus service 14. Route 14 does not exist. Now there is a Route 16, which runs through Hyde Park and the VA, but that bus route does not run on weekends. There is no weekend bus service to cut down on potential vehicle travel. Any events or church services will result in traffic typical only seen during Hyde Park Street Fair. A variance request to parking should not be granted. I encourage you to accept the appeal. This time we need more data on impacts to neighborhood traffic, parking, and safety. We need to know what actual alternative transportation is available. We need studies on traffic conducted during a time period when the pandemic has not dramatically decreased in Hyde Park area.
30-second
While
warning.
I support TRICA's vision of being an institute for children's art, I cannot support the potential for an event center or church. At no time has any effort been made by John Swarthout to communicate TRICA's plan with me or my adjacent neighbors. A postcard from the city of Boise was all that alerted me to this change request. An art institute for children is a wonderful idea. However, almost no information has been provided to the neighborhood residents on any vision for this building. An event center is completely inconsistent with the neighborhood and the neighborhood's character.
Thank you, Michael. Okay.
Madam Mayor, our next speaker is Sarah Forager, and on deck is Decker Rolfe.
Okay.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can. We can see you too.
Oh, well, shoot. Greetings, City Council and Madam Mayor. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak up on behalf of our community and our neighbors. I just wanted to add a quick point of clarification, Madam Mayor. The 2009, the CUP was for a special exception with parking reduction to operate a private school, commercial school in a R1CH, residential with historic overlay, with 20 events per year of no more than 60 people each. So there was no church included in this initial CUP. I know that was 11 years ago, so I looked up the data for you. We all love children in the arts. However, we are not here to decide on the value of an organization. The commission is hearing two separate appeals and are asked to decide if errors occurred in the process of making a decision that impacts the density of use here in the North End. The city themselves noted in the memo that was presented to you in your packet that there are valid points raised by both appeals. The commission should keep in mind that any error in unlawful procedure, unsubstantial evidence, or an arbitrary or capricious decision without rational basis is cause to uphold the appeal. City planning relies on proper procedure as detailed on their site, planning a review process for public hearings. I checked with Cody Riddle, and this in fact is the layperson's version of the 110303 of City Code. In this procedure, the neighborhood association features prominently in the planning process. I want to bring the council and your mayor into attention of the following procedural shortcomings. Point 1, the North End Neighborhood Association, NENA, president submitted a letter of support for the CUP on NENA letterhead dated May 26th. At this time, NENA board members had not voted or discussed the CUP. None of the board members, aside from the president, were aware that this letter of support was sent out. When NENA board met in August, they discovered that this letter was sent after the P&Z meeting occurred. They then voted to withdraw support for the CUP. We just heard from Autumn Street, which confirms this point. Autumn also noted that they did not admit or deny that there may have been impropriety in their process. I want to point you to another point of error. Neighbors were not given a voice at the neighborhood association meeting, NENA, with the applicant. At the July 28th NENA meeting, where the applicant was scheduled to present, at the beginning of the Zoom meeting, Mark Baltus, board president, stated, "We will not be allowing public comment or discussion on this issue, re TRICA." All microphones were then muted. The public who attended, which included myself, because I had gotten a flyer from a grassroots neighbor in my mailbox, Karina Younts, who you hear as an applicant or appellant, Claudia Brandis, my brother Daniel Forger, among others, were not permitted to ask questions, comment, or speak, provide any public hearing or discourse on this issue. The applicant, however, was permitted to speak, and there was no public forum given per the planning procedure on Boise site. The appeal process specifically allows the city council to rectify errors like these, where the procedure has failed the citizens, where political process has not been transparent. This is a clear example of unlawful procedure, and we ask the commission to take these violations seriously and uphold the appeal, setting an example of how proper procedure is key to ethical democracy. Thank you very much for your time, and I know it's going to run late, so again, thank you.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, next we have Decker, and then who's on deck?
We have Carlos Cotto and Sarah Moraine.
Great, thanks. Hi, Decker, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Two other fellow board members have already testified. I'm a third. I'll echo the empathy and the sympathy for growth and change. And, you know, the appeal that's happening is understandable on a number of levels. However, as you might imagine, I encourage you to not approve the appeal. The spirit of, in particular, the charges and the appeal points that we are an event center, as my colleagues and others have noted, they're just not based in our business plan. That was referenced. I can maybe spend a moment just sharing. We're looking for earned income revenue streams. Nonprofits in general are strapped, not only because of COVID, but because of a number of reasons. Like the corporate giving in Boise has shifted over the last few decades. So a lot of nonprofits are not able to marshal the same resources in the same ways. So a paradigm in the realm of nonprofit operating and philanthropy is to shift the mindset towards business, not become a business, but think of non-threatening earned income models that a nonprofit that are aligned with the nonprofit's mission, that would all allow the nonprofit and especially the leaders to do programmatic work as opposed to fundraising work. And that's exactly what our strategic goals are. We're trying to shift with this building into a new era of having more impact programmatically, reaching more children, allowing John to replicate himself. There's key man risk in our model. And he can train others more reasonably with a centralized resource in a building. But we're not doing events of the nature that they've understandably raised concerns about. I'll stop there, but on the comments about TRICA, but I would ask the appellants to please, whatever the results of tonight are, please engage with us and develop some trust with us. We really are good neighbors, and we don't aim to let you down. To the council and the mayor, again, please do not allow the appeal to be approved. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
One question for Mr. Rolfe, if he's still here. The question is, do you, with the financial work and in particular the balance you're trying to achieve between fundraising and programmatic work, do you feel that the 20 event per year limitation puts your organization at risk? Do you think it's irrelevant? Do you think it's appropriate? What are your thoughts on that limitation?
You know, I would say that in general, including those provisions, the thorough and thoughtful work of the staff and the team and all of the agencies that have had their fingerprints on this process, we understand and we're fine with. We're here just to say we've made it work. We've revised our plans, including the the changes that were last recently approved, and really we're here today to validate that and honor that and appreciate that. So we're just looking for this appeal to not be approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too.
Next up, I think, was Sarah Meringue. And then,
Madam Mayor, it was actually Carlos Cotto and then Sarah Murray.
okay, great. Carlos?
Hey, how you doing? I don't think I have a camera, but oh yeah, they're letting me use the camera now. Okay, very good. How you doing, Madam Mayor? I'm Carlos Cotto. I live on 1411 West Eastman Street, across the street from Trica, and I support this appeal and I oppose this this coup. I want to make sure that we understand that we don't oppose children's art. No one does. This continuously saying that we oppose it is resonant to the Iraq 9/11 propaganda of the Bush administration to distract and obfuscate. We do not oppose children's art or a church. We oppose a concert hall. City Code states that in section 110304 sub 13 that exception to allow certain use that are not permitted, but that with special consideration and under certain conditions may be of equal or less impact and allow uses and benefit the immediate community. It also says it shall not increase density on a residential district. How is having an event center and a concert hall with over 300 people throwing parties, food trucks, loud music, drinking, etc. comply with the above mentioned city code? It does not. This is a concert hall, not a social event center attached to a church. There is no church anymore. How will Trica monitor that those that hire out their whole concert hall will follow the rules? They cannot. How will that be enforced? It cannot. The children's school dancing video shown here has nothing to do with this application. This is a for-profit concert hall application in a residential area. It's not supported by code. The PNC Commission members mentioned several times at voting that they would approve it because they felt a year test was a good safety net. One member went so far as to say, it's just a year. You have a big pile of nothing like junk, so we can pull the plug. Another member mentioned at voting that the safety net of the year was her driving just decision. What is a safety net? What is a test? How, who will measure the test? They have not mentioned that. Once things are approved, they are almost impossible to walk them back. The safety net is a poor feel-good argument. A business that claims to be a non-profit that under 2018 IRS filing dedicated less than 5% of the community donations to the dance. That's $29,000 out of $750,000 in donations on programs, while paying himself as a director more than twice what similar sized charities do. That's $130,000. It's just a cash cow. The church has pulled out. Nina does not support this cap or trick anymore. This is nothing more than the meeting factory. Is in a full residential neighborhood, using a Dadfos Children's Charity as a front to distract us. No one opposes children arts. We oppose a concert hall, an event center in the middle of a historical residential district that is not supported by city code exemption rules. They don't have a proper traffic impact, a proper safety study, and no parking study. It should have never been approved. This cap does not meet city code in any way, shape, or form. It was capriciously approved. We don't oppose dancing classes, we oppose a concert hall. Reject the coup, upheld the neighbor's appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night.
Good night.
Next up, Sarah Meringue.
Hello, I'm Sarah Meringue, 1411 West Eastman Street. From what I understand, Trica has said that they've received $7 million since 2009. They received over $750,000 in donations in 2018, with 5% going back to the community. If this dance school needs that much money over 11 years just to function, we need to rethink this project. Imagine the people and the children that we could have helped as a community with that much money. We have kids going to school homeless and hungry, without coats, without breakfast, without lunch. But we're spending that much money for a dance program that has not actually happened very well yet. From what I understand, they have had dances at Jump, but I don't understand why it can't continue in Jump. It is a beautiful building, it's a big building, and it's a home. It's in residential community. All of the big homes don't need to turn into event centers. There's a difference between a dance school that's going to help a lot of kids that can't afford dance schools, as opposed to an event center that is going to make a profit for John. That to me is very concerning. I have a lot of friends that have given and donated John a lot of money, but they have not seen anything come out of it. I personally tried to get my kids signed up in the dance class 2 years ago, before I was a part of this neighborhood and the things that were happening here, and no one called me back for months. I couldn't get my kids signed up in 2018, so I'm still not quite sure about that. But this dream is great. I think it's great, but I don't know why it can't happen at Jump or at the YMCA. The North End neighborhood is not a neighborhood where we have a lot of, for lack of better terms, needy children. This neighborhood can afford, most of the kids can afford extracurricular activities. So that it has to be in this neighborhood where it has to be hurting the residential to help kids, I don't feel like those two add up. That's not a balance. There's a lot of neighborhoods that could use this help, and there's a lot of buildings that could be used properly for this. But to spend $7 million,
80-second warning,
$700,000 in 1 year with $30,000 was spent on helping children. Out of that much of our community's money that could have gone to feed children, to clothe children, to house children, to actually help our community. And we've hurt our community by allowing this man to profit off of our donations. It hurts me, and it should hurt everyone that's allowing this to happen, and for anyone to vote for this to continue. It's heartbreaking. I'm asking for the approval of this appeal. There are many other areas that we could help, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Have a great night. Thanks for joining us this evening. So I need to address some, it sounds like 3 folks have their hands up that are not party of record. Mary and Daniel Forager, I understand that Sarah has referred to a page in the record. We have looked through it. Do not have Daniel or Mary Forager listed in the records that we have available to us at this point. I'm going to have to say that we cannot include your testimony this evening, given that it's an appeal. And then Kelly Ferris also, we do not have Kelly Ferris listed in our parties of record. So I'm sorry that I'm going to have to say the same thing to Kelly, that we're not able to hear your testimony this evening. There are, I think that there are a couple more people.
No, Madam Mayor,
There's
no one
nobody else that hasn't testified this evening that is raising their hand to testify?
Correct.
Oh, all right. Okay. We've heard from everybody online. Next up, we've got 2 different appellants to do their rebuttals, as well as the applicant. Are we good to keep going, or do people need to take a quick break? Good. Okay. And can you remind me of the order again? Applicant and then the appellants. Okay, great. The applicant first and then the appellants. Wait, who is that?
Madam Mayor, could I ask one quick question of staff before we take this so that both the applicant and the appellant might be able to, thank you.
If anybody else has questions.
So Cody.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. All right, Cody, within the existing conditions, there's a couple that I want to understand a little more fully. 12, 13, and 14 I guess just 13 and 14 talk about these annual reviews. In 13, it says that TRICA will report to NINA yearly. And in 14, it indicates that only during the first year will that result in a full review where potentially CUP modification could be brought forward or affected parties. I'm wondering if it would make sense to reference something in 13 that would allow either party to request a full review any year. Did you guys talk about that when you wrote these conditions?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, no, we did not. And certainly that could be, something like that could be crafted and written in at least to, for the first couple years, or that we reevaluate at that first annual review, that be a discussion point that if we want to extend an annual review for another term, I guess.
Well, I guess, and what I'm saying is that we're already requiring an annual report, if you will, on the facility to NINA. And that just include in that, if either party wants to request a full annual review in any year, that they're able to do that. In other words, we wouldn't necessarily dictate a full annual review, but if something arises down the road and somebody wants one, maybe TRICA wants a modification to have more events because they're finding they're not an issue. Maybe NINA wants one because it's a bigger issue than they thought. Who knows? But after that first year, I'm just wondering how that might happen.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, it's probably easier for the applicant, and that they could always request a modification from a permit. Where it might be a little problematic in enforcing or implementing is, if a single, and this isn't to downplay a neighbor's concern, but if a single neighbor has a concern, they could hold up, I guess, the permit, or it could be become quite cumbersome for the city. Maybe if council were to head down that road, it's something where, if through a vote of the NINA board, they could request that additional review. That might be easier.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm suggesting, because 13 requires that report to the NINA board. Okay. And then I just wanted to clarify with you, as I read through the record, my memory of the process at NINA before the first hearing was that, well, first of all, recognizing NINA is not a public body, they're not required to take public testimony, even though they're a recognized neighborhood association. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that's correct.
Okay, and that secondly, although their president testified that the record did not indicate in their minutes of vote, in fact, they had held a vote via email, and that vote was in favor of supporting the application, and that's what the letter was written on. That's my memory of reading the record. Is that your memory?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that's our understanding. But then again, you had subsequent testimony tonight that there was kind of a change of heart there.
Well, sure, there was a second vote, but I'm just saying that the first one wasn't just the president, as I read the record.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that's our understanding as well.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for staff? All right, come on up. What is this?
Mayor
Is it 5
and
minutes?
City Council.
Yeah.
To clarify, Nina, they have not withdrawn support of the TRICA project. What they stated is they are remaining neutral to the appeal process. For the record, they have not withdrawn support for TRICA. They have remained neutral in regards to the appeal. I know that this process is not against TRICA. It is to show that planning and zoning staff and council acted in error. And so I really want to speak to those issues specifically. In regards to the traffic and parking, there was a traffic study and parking study done where they looked at every house and measured how many parking spaces are on the street in that area. During the parking study, although it did take place in numerous phases of COVID, I would argue to say that the neighbors' cars were at home in front of their homes in that area, probably more so because of that. So I want to address that. In regards to the procedural deficiencies, TRICA followed everything. We gave notice. We sent out what is required by city to every neighbor. The city tells you how many people. They even give you a list of the addresses, and those things are sent out. A neighborhood meeting was held, open to everyone. The signs were posted 4x4 at TRICA's expense. In fact, they were defaced by one of the appellants. We followed everything that we were supposed to do. Had the city told us you need to do it for 1,000 feet, we would have done that. The classification of use. I do understand that these publics available for community use is a question, okay? Two things. One, in the North End neighborhood plan, they identify the 5 most important things that are in the making of that neighborhood plan. Historic preservation is huge. This project is checking that off the list. Placemaking is huge. This project is checking that off the list. Community engagement is huge. This is a place where people can gather. I would feel selfish saying no one else can use this space. I do want to clarify some of the inquiries we have gotten about what those might be. A filming for Treefort Music Fest, a filming for the Boise Baroque Orchestra, a filming of a concert for youth and Robert Franz and the Idaho Orchestra Institute, a gallery show by Helena Peterson and Amy Granger for an installation public show of quilts, Peaceful Belly Farms, the community-supported agricultural pickup spot. Weddings, we've had 4 requests to host private weddings. Girl Scouts of Silver Sage, a meeting space request for regular troop meetings because they are no longer going to be able to meet outdoors with the shift in the weather. I wish we could tell them yes now. We want to be able to say yes to these groups. We did all the procedures that we needed to do in regards to the appeal, showing that that planning and zoning and staff acted in error. With the 1-year check-in, we also feel confident that we can lean into that to address things as they come up. Because of these things, I ask that you deny the appeal and approve the CUP process that was approved very thoroughly by planning and zoning staff and commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now appellants. Are there still 2 parties that are planning on doing rebuttals? Okay.
Yes.
First of all, before I start my comments, I want to apologize to you for my obviously strained and stressed presentation before. My heart meds are being adjusted, so I came across as very befuddled. Maybe I was because you messed up the order of our presentation. But, you know, it's hard to be against children singing and dancing. I hope that we have made it clear that we're not opposed to TRICA, to a Treasure Valley Arts Center for children. But the place is a fire trap, folks. If you listen to Mr. Erstad's testimony, he would leave you with the impression that the fire department signed off on this and that there are bells and alarms and other things already in place. None of that is true. There are no alarms, there are no sprinklers, and if you watch the video, the place is made out of wood. One of the allowed mentioned uses is birthday parties. Where there's birthday parties, there's candles, there's crepe paper, there's kids running around while their parents are distracted. During the break, Mr. Riddle I made the comment about it being a fire trap, and he said, more so than a meth house? Well, no, I would suggest that it's a wash. It's just as dangerous as it was as a meth house. Mr. Riddle also made the comment in answer to a question that the same conditions are being applied in this CUP that were applied in 2009. Not true. I ask you to look at page 249 of the original 2009 document that was approved. That's where the fire department listed those requirements for the fire lanes, for the cutting out of parking on one side of the street if it's less than 30 feet, and the International Fire Code. None of that is mentioned in the new document. I would beg you, if nothing else, make sure that page 249 is included, of 2009, is included in the 2020 approval that you're about to give. And off-street, one more thing about off-site parking. Your city code says it has to be within 600 feet. I'd ask you to identify where that is before you approve. That's all.
Hi. Am I,
I'm gonna pause us all. So we have now discovered the foragers in a document in the file. And so for that reason, I'm going to reopen the hearing and allow the foragers, if they're still here, to testify. And then the applicant and the appellant, I'll close again. Applicant will be able to rebut anything, appellant as well. And what was that time left? It was 2:38, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And 2:38, Brent, which part, because Corinne is speaking for 14th Street neighbors, so Kelly, you're up next. I'm just gonna pause you in case you want to address, I think that these people are on your side, but just in case you want to address it, we're gonna go back and then, okay. So foragers, I think it was David and Mary, if I remember correctly. Are you still with us?
Madam Mayor, I do have Daniel.
Oh,
Forager
Daniel.
on there.
Okay, great. And sorry,
and
Sarah, about
Mary.
that. What?
And Mary.
Oh, great. All right. Hey there.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you, Mayor McLean and City Council. I am speaking as someone who testified in the Planning and Zoning meeting in August, and I encourage you to approve this appeal in support of transparency and due process. The initial Planning and Zoning decision was not supported by evidence. There is no evidence that TRICA has a valid contract with a church. Further, we do not know the extent to which TRICA will rely on non-TRICA paid events. In the absence of a business plan and evidence of viable revenue stream from arts and instruction. Several P&Z commissioners had concerns. Commissioners Bratnober, Squires, and Blanchard all stated that they were approving the CUP because the applicant had just 1 year from the date of August 3rd CUP to, quote, have their run and end quote. And I quote Commissioner Blanchard on both issues. We don't have anything in writing from the church. We haven't seen a business plan. We have no idea what anything in any kind of revenues are going to be necessary to run this thing. So at the end of the day, again, I think all we are really approving here is a 1-year pilot to see if Mr. Swarthout can get this thing off the ground or not. And then my understanding of the clawback is that in 1 year, if we don't have anything up and running, or it's not up and running to everyone's comfort level, then we pull the plug and use the permit. Planning and zoning decided based on insufficient evidence and neighborhood surveying, as noted in Commissioner Blanchard's direct quote from the minutes. This is a cause for error in decision, and in support of the appeal, we are asking that City Council acknowledge it as such.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. And is there somebody else with you? Same last name?
Not with me.
Click down below.
What?
Raise your hand.
No other forager? Oh. Hi, Mary. We hear you. We
Okay, good. Okay. Hello and thank you, City Council, Madam Mayor. My name is Mary Forager and I live at 1303 North 6th Street. I testified in opposition of this CUP at the P&Z meeting in August. I would like to state the following. The applicant and the city claimed that the CUP would encourage public transportation options. I'd like to point out that a church typically meets on Sundays. Events like weddings take place on Saturday nights, and the closest bus routes are 16, 14, and they do not run on the weekends. In short, there was no evidence presented that the infrastructure necessary to support this density, and I repeat that again, this density of use is in place or planned to be constructed at this site. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mary. And is that it? Those are the two. There's not a third. Okay. All right. With that, I'm going to close the hearing. Do you guys have anything more you want to add? Specific to the new testimony we just heard. Yeah, we're not starting the 5 minutes over.
Did you say anything that hasn't already been said? And with the fire code, these projects meet all the requirements of the fire code. And that's all.
Thank you. Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor.
And council
For
members.
clarification, how much time would you like to put up? 3 minutes?
Thank you for that time. Again, we have grave doubts about these 20 additional special event or event uses of this building. They've given you a broad characterization of potential events, but it is our understanding that TRICA's business plan explicitly is looking for money. They want to rent out this building. So it is not a far stretch for the neighbors to anticipate that we may have larger size events. The CUP says up to 350 people. So we can anticipate those may occur. We understand TRICA's needs to raise money in its business plan. So it is not a far stretch for us to have very grave concerns about these uses, additional uses of up to 350 people at a time. So I just want to conclude and say that there were errors in the CUP decision. They didn't have substantial evidence on traffic and parking that they could mitigate those concerns. Your own staff acknowledge those concerns. Okay, and just by the way, over the years, as these Hyde Park businesses have come and gone, and I've lived there 33 years, so I've seen them all. I wasn't there when the shoe store started back at the late 1800s, but I've been there for all of the other businesses that have come and gone. And I like to enjoy the amenities. Fortunately, I arrive by foot, so my impact is substantially less than all these visitors that flock to the Hyde Park district. But what planning and zoning typically does is they carve out parking exceptions for each and every one of these. These 13 bars and restaurants that currently operate in Hyde Park all have parking exceptions. So the impact has been cumulative. And now you want to add an event center that could bring up to 20 events involving 350 people. It just seems like the area is oversaturated. No, we don't want to value cars over people, but this CUP needs to be rethought in terms of the impact on parking and traffic and safety. We recognize the hurdle is very high for us to convince you to accept this appeal. But we want you to look underneath what's happening in this neighborhood to recognize that the cost that's already been put on the residents is unreasonably high and that this was not appropriately evaluated by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. All right, and then we have Corinna on Zoom.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to correct the matter of record that Councilmember Clegg asked about. She mentioned that, or she asked about the letter from Nina. The initial letter was not from Nina, it was from Mark Baltus. He wrote it on May 26th. The Nina board found out about that on July 28th or so, and then they did the email vote more than 2 months after he had sent that initial letter. Along with that procedural difficulty, I'm asking you to take away the special events from this CUP. I'm asking you because it's an outrageously high capacity for that building and it requires extraordinary resources. I believe that the Planning and Zoning granted this organization a special privilege with these events. And the reason it's special is because it has that extra touch where the city is going to oversee the parking on their behalf. The residents have no recourse whatsoever, and there's no oversight of it. If they had gone ahead with the social events center application, they could have notified us of that, but they never notified us of these events. We never had a chance to contribute to the conversation. And this is a procedural error that you can correct by just getting rid of these events. We're not asking you to get rid of the dance school. We're asking you to keep concerts and big dances and things like that. We're asking you to keep for-profit promoters from coming to our neighborhood and using this space. We're not asking you to keep quilts out of the building. We're not asking you to keep Girl Scouts out. We think all of that can be done at the level of occupancy that has been approved. We're just asking you to get rid of these events. And as far as it goes, there's no substantiated evidence whatsoever that suggests these are an accessory use. They need the money. They stated it at the NINA meeting. They stated at the Planning and Zoning meeting that the limitations of the 20 events were going to cripple their business. Well, if that's the case, then the business is not a nonprofit organization for children. It is an event center. And I know that you all can see this. I don't imagine anything except for not living near an event center. And that's all the 14th Street neighbors are asking in this particular appeal, is to just get rid of those events that we were not notified of. And there are a number of, and they are not substantiated as an accessory use. They're simply not. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Corinna. So are there additional questions for staff?
Madam Mayor. Cody, question for you. First, thank you for the extra effort in finding that lost person in the transcripts and getting them in. I'm sure that's appreciated. So when this was
Lost in the transcripts. I like
yeah.
that.
When this was originally approved in 2009, could it have been used for special events? Could they have hosted a party, a wedding, a concert there if it had its certificate of occupancy and all those other things?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, yes, the conditions are very similar to 2009.
Yeah. In 2009, if it would have gotten its certificate of occupancy, if the building would have been completed, could it have been used as a church?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, my recollection is no. And I think that clarifies things perhaps from a question that came up earlier. It's been a long evening. I mean, there was all kinds of discussion that it was a historic church. I mean, that's what the building was constructed for. My recollection is that in 2009, they wanted to use that building for the private commercial school with, you know, a number of accessory events like you have this evening, but they didn't specifically request a church at that time.
Great. And Madam Mayor, just some clarification there.
Yeah.
So 2009, approved as a school, could be used as some special events as well. And so the difference now is that they're coming back, they're reapplying, and they're asking with the ability to be used as a church in the future. And they don't have to have a contract with a church to do that now. They're basically asking for permission to potentially do that in the future. So that's kind of the only addition to what we're seeing is the ability to use this as a church from the 2009 application. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, that's correct.
All right. And then just one more question as it relates to fire. So the building has not gotten its certificate of occupancy yet. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in order for it to get its certificate of occupancy, it will have to have a fire inspection, and the fire department will have to go through and make sure that everything is held at the high standard that everything else is in Boise. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, absolutely.
Perfect. That's all I got.
Further questions? All right, then I'll go ahead and close this fully.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I would move to deny both appeals. And I could.
Second.
Here's my reasoning. I'm pretty utterly agnostic to TRICA's internal finances. I'm utterly agnostic to their internal plans and programming and what they want to do. I'm pretty agnostic to the event center argument. I don't think that's an accurate characterization of what they've told us. What I really am concerned about is an error or an arbitrary and capricious application of the law or a serious deviation from our procedures by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And that is a high standard. I don't see it on the traffic. I see differing opinions on what that evidence, what conclusion you should come to from that evidence, but the Planning and Zoning Commission did rely on a traffic study, and it did rely on the historical use in the neighborhood, which is substantial evidence. On safety, same issues with traffic safety. As to fire safety, it's been pretty well aired. I think that a lot of that has yet to be addressed. There's no, there are no sprinklers in the building, but then again, there's been no fire inspection for occupancy either. All of those things will be taken care of in the future, and I have no doubt that our inspectors and our fire marshal will certify a code compliant building when the time comes. As to notice, I don't see any improper application of our rules for notice. I understand that the neighbors feel like they would have liked more notice, but I didn't hear any argument that showed that we actually violated our rules for notice. And in fact, having walked past there, I've seen the signs. We didn't hear from any neighbors, for instance, who said I live within 500 feet and never received a postcard. The rest of the arguments that we heard, this doesn't, for me, come down to whether we are for or against children dancing, or whether we are for or against a nightclub in the North End. First, children dancing was not the basis of the Planning and Zoning Commission's ruling. And second, there's no real doubt that this is not going to be a nightclub. I would have been open to hearing from the applicant that some of the constraints that we placed on them were too onerous. I want to see this succeed. I would have been open to hearing that 20 events was too few, but we have a process to address that in the future, this ongoing negotiation that we're going to have. And what we did hear about that actually said, that's fine. So for those reasons, given in particular the lack of an improper decision or a baseless decision or an insubstantiated decision by the Planning and Zoning Commission, I would vote to deny the appeal, both appeals.
Madam Mayor.
Oh, sorry, you can't hear me because I was leaning back. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I seconded this motion because I will also be supporting denying the appeal. I certainly understand how hard it is to park in this neighborhood. Kelly, as Kelly well knows, because her sister lives near me, my particular part of the neighborhood is also pretty heavily parked, not nearly as much as Hyde Park, but more so than many other places. And so I'm certainly sympathetic to that argument. At the same time, we have all enjoyed the fact that we have a neighborhood where we have more than single family homes and nothing else. And part of the enjoyment that we get is that mix of uses. Historically, that has included any number of churches, including this one, that existed without any parking whatsoever on site. So as I looked through the record and I studied it pretty carefully, not only did I not see an error, as Councilmember Bajan talked about, but I also saw substantial conversation and interest by the Planning and Zoning Commission in the conditions that were applied, both in the times that are going to be allowed for use, in the number of people that are going to be able to use it in certain types and times, and in how the parking will be regulated for these social events that will be allowed under this conditional use permit. It does put a burden on the city to administer those, but in fact, the city bears a lot of burdens in administering much of its code. And I don't think, as I look at the record, it's an unfair burden. As Councilmember Bajan talked about, TRECA's business plan really is not something that is part of this hearing, nor should be part of this record. We don't ask that of other applicants. We ask what their use is going to be, and we leave it to them to make it or not if we approve that use. And that's what we'll be doing here. I am glad that there's the 1-year review. I am a little concerned because this is going to be an unusual year, that at the end of this year, we may not know everything. And so I would encourage staff to work with the applicant and the neighborhood association, if this passes tonight, to ensure that the neighborhood association also has an opportunity in subsequent years to raise issues via this process if possible. The applicant always has that right through CU modifications, but the neighborhood association would not. And then finally, tonight, I think we heard pretty clearly the kinds of events that are being contemplated in those 20 nights a year. And to me, they very much fall into the definition I read of a social event center, which is in fact conditioned use in our zones. And so for all of those reasons, I will be supporting the motion to deny the appeals.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, just a point of clarification from the council president's comments. The requirement of a report after a year is 1 year after operations begin, not 1 year from now. So I believe that that might have been a requirement put in back in 2009, if I'm correct. And so agree with your sentiment, but just want to be sure that the record reflects that the actual condition is a year after operations, so that the residents that are concerned will have more time to see how it works.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate that clarification.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is such an interesting position to be in. You know, as I stated earlier, I've had a very long history with this organization and this building. But my decision tonight is so much easier than any decision I've ever made in regards to TRICA, because the only decision we are here to make tonight is to decide if planning and zoning erred in their decision. And that's it. So as I'm reading through, or as I've read through, and then I'm reviewing the record of the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, they asked a ton of questions, and they really brought up all of the issues at hand in their questioning of the applicant and their questioning of staff. And so I commend them on that, because that makes our job so much easier. Really, you know, they covered the gamut. They were well aware of all of the traffic and parking environment that surrounds Hyde Park when they made that decision. They know what city code is and our enhanced requirements that we now have as a result of significant public input. And so there wasn't an error there. The classification of use was very clearly represented in the planning and zoning record. The special events ordinance doesn't apply to this CUP at all. And the building, as we've been assured, will comply with all fire codes and will ensure the safety of users and residents. So I never really considered what an easy, you know, not without complexity, but you know, we have a really objective decision to make here tonight. And so I'll be voting to deny both appeals with my fellow council members.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to be supporting the motion tonight to deny the appeal. And I think everybody's covered a lot of this stuff really well so far. And I appreciate all the city council members strictly looking at the appeal. And I realize that it's really tough for people who are commenting and people who are calling in to not be emotionally attached to an organization or to, you know, a way of life. But, you know, really the decision that we have has nothing to do with, you know, whether or not we like TRICA or, you know, whether or not we, you know, want concerts or those different types of things. There are a few different things I do want to bring up. I don't believe that planning and zoning, ACHD, the Boise Fire Department were in error in addressing safety. And there's actually in the transcripts, there's some talk about the aspect that this church is in a more bicycle friendly area than it's ever been before, with 15th Street with complete bike lanes, Sharrow's on 13th Street, and 11th Street bikeway coming in the next few years, that this is actually a more pedestrian and bicycle friendly area than it's been before in the past. And then I also think that when we go back and we talk about the intended use of the space and was that misrepresented, well, I think in Blueprint Boise, we talked about making a predictable pattern of development. And this was originally designed as a church that had events going on in it. And then in 2009, it was approved as a school, you know, that could have events that can continue to exist in it and that could add value to the neighborhood and where people could be walking and biking from the areas that they live. And I think that in its existence, it's probably never been more easy and probably more safe to walk and bike to that area. So again, you know, for the reasons listed already, in addition to those, I'll be in favor of the motion.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since my colleagues have already covered the reasons why it would be a good idea to support Councilmember Bajent's motion, I'm going to talk about just the history of this location. You know, what we've talked about and what we've heard people talk about is the, you know, what this place used to be like, and what that church was once used for, and who used that church, and how many people used that church. But you know, when I first joined the council back in January of 2018, one of the reasons that I insisted on having members of the Indigenous community be a part of my swearing in ceremony was because I knew that a lot of the decisions that we as council members would be making would be about the use of our land and how we feel about making room for each other. And so you know, we celebrated Indigenous Peoples Day yesterday. And, you know, sometimes when these holidays come up, we think about them in terms of history in the past. We don't really think about how that figures into the decisions that we make today. But I always think about it. And somebody made reference, I cannot remember who the person was who testified earlier, but just about who would be the people using the TRICA space now. And would it be children from this neighborhood? And I think the implication being that the North End is full of rich people. And we don't have people who would need a nonprofit youth program that would be offered through TRICA. Well, okay, let's say that's the case. And let's say we have members of our community from the other parts of Treasure Valley coming to the North End to enjoy John's programming there. I think that's a good thing. I remember my first Girl Scout meeting took me to the rich part of town in Buckeye, Arizona. And that was the first time I realized that people had their own bedrooms. And I got to mix and mingle with children that at school I didn't get to mix and mingle with them, but through Girl Scouts I did. And I got to see a different way of life. It was a different kind of cultural diversity. It was one where somebody from a different socioeconomic level got to take and participate with people from a higher economic level. So I hope that is the case. I hope we have children from different parts of the Treasure Valley participating in John's program. So like I said, I concur and agree with all the reasons that my other colleagues gave for supporting Councilmember Bajent's proposal, his motion, but I just thought I would add that as well. And while we're talking about this, Madam Mayor, I hope that moving forward, we may consider changing the way we start our council meetings, that perhaps we could consider doing away with the invocation and replacing that with a land acknowledgement, acknowledging the original inhabitants of the Boise Valley. So, you know, I would love to talk about that at another time, but thank you for hearing me out.
Madam Mayor,
Go ahead.
I support the motion. Thank you.
All right. Well said. Very, very well said. Is that everybody? It is. All right. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Burton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
All right. Thank you, everybody. With that, there's no further business to come before the council.
Madam Mayor, I move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Take care.